Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we have the second episode of the Enigma podcast. I am joined once again by the same folks as last time, my teammates. You can call me Al,
Hello, hello, hello. Happy to be here. Excited for another episode.
Sip,
Hey, hello.
and Beton.
Hello, racers.
Awesome. So we got a lot of very exciting topics. Before we start, I just wanted to basically point out a couple of things compared to last time. Of course, last time was the first episodes. Just want to let you know that yes, I'm the host technically, but we're not like, this is not the Joe Rogan experience. I'm not interviewing the different members of Team Enigma. We are all equal and we all kind of speak equally on every subject matter since we all have the expertise. So this is not, don't expect me to behave like a host from like a regular podcast. We're just kind of like all talking as a team, as teammates. Yeah, so before we start the video, I just want to let you know that this the sponsor of this podcast is going to be Card Market, the best marketplace to find and sell cards in Europe. So yeah, back to the podcast. This is a special holiday podcast. We all have our holiday hat on, and the first topic of this video is going to be concerning, of course, the new expansion that is coming out for in March after the rotation is called A Lawless Time. And so my question to you guys is, what do you think about the card mechanic of the card that was spoiled so far, and the cards, all the mechanics, and yeah, what do you think about? What are your thoughts? So Al, what do you think?
Yeah, so we've had, what is it, about, I think, like 20 cards or something so far, so a decent number to kind of whet our appetites for the new set. There's a few things that I like. I think the credit tokens, we've obviously seen those before in other card games, you know, they're reminiscent of treasure tokens from Magic, and I think that they were successful in Magic. I think they will be here as well. You know, it's almost like what's not to like about them. I think they're really good. They're a great way to do ramp. You know, where you've kind of got something tangible on board that you can interact with. So I'm really excited for those. I think they're a great addition. Yeah, it's only a natural fit that they would bring those in. The sort of multicolour cards, that's kind of the other marquee mechanic. I don't really look at those as a new mechanic, honestly. All they really are cards that are harder to put in decks. Now, I don't have inherently a problem with that. You know, there are lots of cards that are hard to put in decks, like double aspect cards and things like that. But I do think that it's not really a mechanic as such, and I don't think it really brings a massive amount to the game. I think it just kind of makes deck building slightly more maybe slightly more interesting, maybe slightly more awkward. So I hope that there is going to be another maybe, you know, big sort of mechanic that's kind of new to it as well, not just multicolored cards, because they sort of should just be kind of, you know, thrown into sets moving forward, I think. And then the only other thing was Daimyo's Palace, which is obviously, it's kind of you know, a unique thing in itself. I know it's only a base, but it's a bit like, you know, Data Vault or something, where it kind of makes you rethink the way that the game is played in a way. Should be really cool for limited. I'm not sure if it will be playable in constructed or not, but I hope it is, because I think that sort of cycle of bases that let you to, you know, break the aspect penalty for one action could be really cool. So yeah, I think the mechanics are fine, but I would like I said, I would like maybe another big mechanic that you know, changes the game in some way.
Okay. Ready to move to Sip?
Yep.
Yeah. So I overall like the looks of the new set so far. Like, they're taking a lot of inspiration again from other games, like the Magic credits are just the treasure tokens, and the double aspect cards are also kind of similar thing to other games. So yeah, in that sense, it's kind of safe new additions. So, and I think because they were successful in other games, I think they will be successful here as well. So I agree with that. And when it comes to newer cards specifically, I have one card that I'm a little bit concerned about, which is Hondo, and the fact that he's a legendary. Because the power level of this card is not great, and I guess we can talk about the legendaries later, but yeah, I'm a little bit afraid of that he's not that high power level of a card.
You know, that's a very good point. Yeah, the first legendary, we've said many times in the podcast, I've said many times in my videos that legendary needs to be better in order to make the game successful from a financial standpoint. And so far the first legendary we've seen is just not good at all. So I agree with that.
Yeah, but other than that, I really look forward to the set. I personally really like the the theme of like underworld and such. I really liked also the shadows, and this set is gonna be probably kind of similar. So I'm excited for like the theme.
Cool. Beton.
Oh, I'm like I think the credit mechanic is the best way to do ramp. So I'm really glad they went into this direction other than just ramp, because as we all know, ramp is inherently too powerful in Star Wars because of the leaders. So this is a way to do ramp in a way that feels more like
More fair, yeah.
will be easier to balance. But other than that, I am not impressed at the moment. I think the bases will be cool, the common bases. The starter base is probably completely unplayable. The I think, but I have two really big concerns. I think we again have leaders that are like, I don't see a reason to play Leia. I think she may be one of the worst leaders in the game. And Jabba doesn't really seem that good. And we are losing a lot of leaders at the same time. And as Sip said, Legendary that we got doesn't look great, but maybe the game will change enough that really slow, really value-oriented cards will be better, but I don't really think so.
Yeah, I think you bring a great point with the leader as well. I think one of the other big requests that I have, and I'm probably gonna hear about it in my video where I'm gonna gather all the feedback I have to FFG in order to make the game better, which is a video that is coming up on my channel. I've been preparing this video for months now, and it's like I also think that the leader balance is just very off. When you're seeing leaders like Leia, I actually watched a video where they explain why they made the leader cost 2, and that didn't make any sense. Basically, I don't remember the name of the person who the designer was talking, but he really didn't sound like he had much experience with the game, which is a bit concerning. I just thought that two resources for that ability is just not good. So about the multicolor, I've been asking for multi-aspect card from the very beginning because I think that this can open up a lot of interesting design space in terms of deck building, and something I was talking about. It was very theoretical, but I was imagining a world where instead of building your deck either heroism or villainy, you would instead be playing with multicolor cards, like basically double colored non-heroism, non-villainy cards. But in order for this to work, you would have to dedicate like an entire set to it. And you would need to have a lot of very powerful leaders which have double aspect, again, non-heroism, non-villainy, for this to work. And I don't think they are willing to commit that hard into that specific aspect. It seems like the multicolored thing is kind of a side dish rather than something they really want to focus on like completely. And in my opinion, for this to work the way I would want it to work, the entire set would have to be focused on that double aspect thing. But this could open up like so much more design space, because we would jump from like, it would make like so many more color combination possibly playable, including double aspects combination, like for example blue green. For example, you would see like decks like this, like blue green, or red yellow, or red, like there would be a lot of interesting combination we've never seen before being playable. But for this, they would need the support of the leaders, of course. So that's something that is a very big if. I'm pretty excited about the common base that can use epic actions in order to ignore aspect combination. I think it's going to be very interesting, especially in draft. I think in draft and sealed, the ability to splash one card from your deck is going to be super cool, because then you can play like one very powerful card. You can play it in your deck, and that's going to be your splash card. So I think it's a really cool thing for limited play. For constructed, I think it's going to be very niche, but for competitive, it's going to be very good. And I'm very excited about this new Han Solo. I think Han Solo is going to be insane in Eternal, notably. Mostly thinking about, I think this the best 2-drop you could think of for Garsax, and also going to be really good in Leia. I personally think it's the best 1-drop in the game. I think it's better than Greedo.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, so I think we're pretty good on this first topic, guys. Anything else you would like to add before we move on to the next one?
No.
I think just to echo the kind of sentiment that I hope that this legendary like thing that Honda, because as far as I'm aware now, I can't remember where I heard this, but I think there was something said that like at this stage now in set 7 will be where they kind of have managed, they've like fully implemented feedback they got from some of the complaints early on. You know, it was as early as Twilight of the Republic set 3 when people were really talking about how bad legendaries are in this game. Even set 2, you know, they weren't the best ever, but you know, set 3 they start to get really bad. So you know, if they still, if by set 7 they're still printing bad leaders, a lot of like, you know, 15 bad leaders in a set, and like, you know, 18 out of 20 bad legendaries, then I think that's a serious problem. So, you know, I'm going to be looking keenly with a sharp eye at every single leader legendary is revealed, and just hoping so much that they make actually playable ones, because I think it's incredibly important to get that right now.
Yeah, that's going to be into the next topic we're going to talk about. I think we're leaning directly into that next topic, but I actually watched back some of my videos, and the earliest feedback I have about legendaries is on my review of set 2. So basically, end of set 2, I already published a video that you guys can go on that video and check out. I'm already putting some serious warning on legendaries of set 2. So obviously that feedback is only getting stronger and stronger every set that's getting released. So cool. So that brings us to the next topic: is what is the one thing you want FFG to get right in 2026? So this is obviously Christmas time. We're all making a little list of the things we want for Christmas, and obviously Santa Claus here is Mr. Fantasy Flight Games is our Santa Claus kind of. What is the one thing? And I think it's very important because, as we said in the previous podcast, that Star Wars Limited is kind of in a weird spot where there's the attendance in tournament is amazing. There's a lot of people attending tournaments, and that's great. But stores are dropping the game. Stores are not making money out of the game. There's a lot of the boxes, the price of the cards is very, very low, which is the indicator that the game is not making much money for a lot of different stakeholders of the hobby. And I think that this environment and this ecosystem is at peril, and we already talked about this. What is the one... So, I'm going to start with Beton this time. What is the one thing you want FFG to get right in 2026?
Okay. One thing, that will be hard. Okay, the one thing I really want them to get good is limited balance.
That's a good one.
And I mostly talk about leaders because I think this is the part when they screw up multiple times now. And it's not an easy task to do, but yeah, we are in the Christmas land, so I want a perfectly balanced A Lawless Time limited.
That's a very good one. Yeah, the leaders is really the most important aspect. So there's actually some suggestions I'm making in my suggestion videos that once again is to reduce the numbers of leaders. I'll give more details about this in the video, but basically my suggestion is to reduce the amount of leaders in order to make them easier to balance, because I don't think we need that many leaders every set, especially rare constructed focused leaders. And I think maybe by reducing the numbers, it may make it a little bit easier to balance.
Yeah, I agree, and I am, and even with my thing, I am worried because yeah, we already have 2 leaders, but they are not part of the limited as much, so I still will be hopeful.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. It's very important. Sip, what is the one thing you want FFG to get right in 2026?
Yeah. So before I get to that, I wanted to say a few words about Beton's idea with the limited. I don't think it's even that difficult, because I feel like the one problem with limited leaders are experienced token leaders. They are the problem. I guess there are a few exceptions, like Anakin, but outside of Anakin, most of the leaders that are a problem are experienced leaders. And I think the easy solution is just putting them in the starter decks, and that would solve a lot of the problems. or like maybe not all of them, but yeah, majority of the limited problems, like we kind of have with the secrets potentially with the Leia. Uh,
Yeah,
and the one thing that I want them to get right, like I cannot stress this enough, but like legendaries, and if not legendaries, like some sort of like form of like FFG making the profit out of this game, or like making the stores like have benefit out of having the product, of like I don't know, like offering something like some sort of like bonus for like stores, like some sort of like promotional card that when you buy like the boxes you get this card or something, something around those lines that makes like buying the boxes like more desirable.
yeah, that's a very good point. The like Biobox promos are actually pretty common in used to be a thing in Magic. I don't know if it's still the case. But I think this is a band-aid thing, and it's not answering the core issue. And the core issue is that there is no chase cards in sets. That regular booster balls are not desirable, and it all comes down to what you were saying about just legendaries just being too weak and being no chase cards. There are other problems related to carbonite boosters as well, and not being valuable, and prestige card not being valuable enough. But that's obviously, we're not here to discuss about all the problems, but this is just a one thing issue. So I think you raised a really good point here. Got anything else?
Not really. Like the reason why I maybe like adding the promo for like buy the box get the promo, like that could be a solution. Like it's not like a long-term solution, but if they struggle with getting like the legendaries right, like maybe like having something temporary like that till they figure out the legendaries, like that can be the solution. Like with the feedback that like they are utilizing in the sets that they're making right now from like the first sets, like we don't necessarily know like which feedback they are talking about. Like, is it set one feedback or is it Twilight feedback? Because set one had good legendaries, so I can even see a world where like the legendaries in this set are still bad because they didn't got the legendary feedback back then, because they maybe were designing like the set 7 only with like set 1 feedback in mind.
Yeah, that's a very good point. With that being said, when a company choose to say that they now being able to integrate the feedback, if you are saying that, that means you mean the feedback that actually people care about. You wouldn't say something like this if the feedback that you're referring to are feedbacks from set 1 that are pretty much irrelevant. I mean, hopefully they are smart. I mean, maybe, and when they say something like this, they set the expectation, and they actually mean the feedback that we actually care about.
Well, the irony is that the set 1 legendaries were so expensive that that if they took on board that feedback, they will be making the legendaries even worse.
Yeah,
So let's hope that they're not taking that feedback on board, please.
Yeah, I think if that
Worse thing.
that's a good point, but I think if that was really the case, then they wouldn't say that. They would say, "Oh,
No.
let's not say anything this sad because it's gonna be bad."
Yeah, absolutely. The one I was gonna say, if nobody else said it, was obviously the legendaries, because even though like personally, like I
Sib just said
couldn't
it.
care less about. Yeah, well, even though personally I couldn't care less about that. Like I'm just saying that I think that's the single most important thing for the health of the game, and I think if they don't make that change, the game will perish. I don't think it will continue on for years to come. So I think that they need to do that as an absolute baseline, the bare minimum. So yeah, 100% back that up with what Sip said, that they need to do that. For me personally, like, because obviously I'm a commentator and stuff, like I would like to see some like revamps to organized play. There's like a big load of things I could say, but I just think there's certain things that are so easy to fix. This is seems like a small problem, but going to Star Wars Unlimited weekly play, should feel like you want to win the prizes there. You want to win, not as in like, the booster packs or whatever, but just like you want to win the promos, the weekly play packs and stuff. You want to go there for a reason. I remember back in set 1, I used to go to weekly play and open up these packs and think, oh yeah, I got a foil Greedo and it was really cool and stuff. But like, ever since like set 1, I've had no interest in going to weekly play for that reason. For the reason of getting the promos. Like, I don't even open the promo packs. They mean nothing to me. The promos are so bad, in my opinion, they're worthless. And they're not exciting to open. I just hate them. So I would love it just if they just picked better cards for the weekly play promos. There was a time when I thought that before the Galactic Championship, the first Galactic Championship, I thought that maybe they just can't make artwork that's really desirable. Like, maybe it's too difficult for them. They can't do it. They can't make, like, not I don't mean specific card artwork, but like a treatment. But then when they did the Galactic Championship artworks, they were so beautiful. I thought the obviously the Super Laser Blast in particular is incredible, but some of the artwork for those cards was amazing. So it shows that they can make really desirable, really sexy promos. But then for weekly play, they just don't do it. Every single set, the weekly play promos are terrible. They're not desirable at all. Nobody wants them. They're worthless. And I just think that they've completely dropped the ball on that. So it's a small thing, but I would love for them to make those promos a lot better. Even the sector and regional championship cards have got a lot better, but I still think there's work to be done for those as well. For example, the upcoming regional championship participation card is Leia, the 5-cost 5/5, in space Leia. And it's kind of an iconic meme character because people don't really like it. But so it's kind of funny, but people don't want to go to an event to get that Leia. Do you know what I mean? Nobody's going to it and thinking, oh yes, I'm going to get my copy of Leia Organa. So I just think it's such an easy thing to do. It's obvious that card is not competitive. It's not, I just think it baffles me to this day that they're picking cards that nobody wants. If you just pick a card that's desirable, has a really cool artwork, cool foiling, it's just a little thing that adds to the the prestige. Now people are going to these, people go to the regionals, people go to the sectors, but to weekly play, for me anyway, locally, the numbers are dwindling. So I think that I do think that in addition to the legendary thing, I think they need to make more reasons to actually go to these stores and get these cards.
Yeah, about the weekly play. So I actually think they have actually improved the weekly play, in the sense that now there's a small chance to get a legendary, which I think is a great idea. So it makes them actually interesting to open because you have a chance to get this legendary. I also disagree with the fact that the weekly play cards are bad. I think most of the weekly the weekly play card in Twilight of the Republic were awful. But to be fair, Twilight of the Republic is one of the worst sets in terms of power levels, so that's understandable. But then they did there were some pretty solid cards most of the time in weekly plays. I think the main problem with weekly plays is, as you were saying, the treatment. Those frames are so ugly. I've given this feedback since day one of the release of the game. I said those weekly plays frames are really not good looking in my opinion, and I think a lot of people agree with me. So hopefully that feedback will go in. If they simply use the same frames that they use for the Galactic Championship, for the regionals, for the sectors, and they apply it to weekly play, that would be great already. That would be a great first step to make weekly play a lot more desirable.
Can I just say, when I said the cards were bad, I didn't necessarily mean power level.
Okay, never mind.
There's 20 cards in the weekly play section, so of course some of them are going to be good. If you look at though, Secrets of Power, 15 of those cards are basically unplayable out of 20, something like that, right? And there's a big number that are unplayable. But even the ones that are good, if you pull a Bail Organa with that, that border and everything from your weekly play pack, to me, I don't think that's very exciting. It's an uncommon. Most people who play the game have their playsets of uncommons very early on. I just think there's not a you're opening it and yes, you can pull the Lando, and I think that's you can pull the legendary. That's fine. Good for you, and it is a good thing to include. But for me, I want more reasons to want to open those packs, and it's almost like they put all the kind of cool, interesting stuff in Carbonite, and they've kind of just said forget everything else. Who cares about weekly play packs?
Yeah.
I just think it shouldn't really be an afterthought. It needs to be a something.
Yeah, but we agree that it's more like the aspect, the aesthetic of the card rather than the card themselves. Yeah. I think the when I'm looking at people who are building their decks, I never see anybody playing weekly card in their deck and put them in their decks. That's a major problem.
Yep.
They're just ugly, and it's mostly because of the frame. The frame is just
sometimes they still don't even use an alternative art, Lurking Snub Fighter and I think Armor of Fortune just have the same artwork. They've just got the ugly frame. That to me, that is just pure laziness. For goodness sake, when they did it the first time back in set 3, I thought, well, maybe they just missed it in the printing, or it's fine, whatever. But every single set there are repeat artworks that just don't give them a different art. And I just think it's a very minor thing, but it's indicative of a wider laziness, I think, on FFG's part.
Yeah, no, I think they're not taking this seriously enough. They did make some improvement, but they didn't make the most important improvement, and the most important improvement was to get rid of that frame. Anyway, hopefully they get that feedback in for. Hopefully, this is one of the things that was spotted very, very early on. So I hope that at least that feedback would be implemented for set 7. Let's hope for it.
I will add to what Al said. I think one of the biggest problems with this is also that nothing in the weekly play is unique, because everything from those boosters you can get in the different means, and most of them you can get with better art and better stuff. And what always was like, if you want to make something desirable for people, we still have a lot of aspects of the game you can include to be like foil bases, foil tokens for experience and shields that would be something that you couldn't get anywhere else, and it would like make people want to go to this more, even than just a chance of getting one legendary that will still like, it is a legendary, so it's worth nothing.
Yeah, but as I said, I think it's so about the tokens. You can make this amalgam. You can get experience tokens somewhere else. It's all about the aesthetic. It's just that those are not desirable because they're ugly. I think that's the core issue.
Yeah, you can get tokens somewhere else, but for example, if foil bases were not available. I think anything else than the Twilight game-genic boxes.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with the foil base. I was just speaking on the other example.
Just quickly, sorry, just throw something quickly in there as well. A no-brainer to me, just on the point you've made there, Beton. Why were there there's literally, in the entire game, there's not a single way to get a different artwork for spy tokens. Why on earth is that? Spy tokens were the marquee mechanic of the set. Imagine if they would have just made a really cool foil spy token in the weekly play packs that you could sometimes open. People would have loved that. It would have been great. It would have cost them nothing. People would have absolutely loved it because you could actually use them in lots of different decks. It's not a specific card, and yet we're stuck with that one Twilight spy token forever. Like until do you know what I mean? Until they do another one, there's no other spy token. I just think that's absurd. It was clearly they could have just done that. It would immediately, for no cost to them, they would have just bumped up the value of the weekly play packs. But no, they didn't.
That's a very good point. They basically lack a little bit of they lack common sense on some of those things sometimes, and they lack it looks like they haven't brainstormed enough on some of those ideas, which is a bit unfortunate. But yeah, so I think I don't really have much to add to what you guys were saying. I think from a gameplay standpoint, I will agree with Beton that the most important thing to get right in 26 from a gameplay standpoint is leader balance, for both constructed and limited, but specifically for limited is really the most important. And from a collectability, from the game ecosystem, for the game economy, and for the survival of the game and the business standpoint, which is the most important right now because gameplay wise the game is doing all right, is obviously the legendaries, getting the legendary right, making basically the positive chain reactions that if legendaries are valuable, there's going to be chase card. People are going to be wanting to buy boxes. If they buy boxes, prices of boxes stay close to MSRP. If they stay close to MSRP, stores make profit out of them. If they make profit, they're going to be wanting to buy more, and that entire ecosystem just get going. If stores benefit more from the game financial success, then they are more willing to organize events. Basically, I think that the game is doing really well for big events, but if you zoom down on the store level, the game is not doing as well, and that's I think a good way to summarize. Cool. You guys ready to move to the next topic? So you guys want to add anything to this?
No, yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Awesome.
So just one quick thing. I think they still do this. I always thought it was a good idea back in set 1. I saw that they did the tokens that you get if you they give stores those tokens, unique initiative tokens if they pre-order boxes. Whatever. I don't know if that's still how they.
Yeah, it's still a thing. It's still a thing.
Yeah, but one, they look hideous and they're always plastic. But if they just did something like that, I think that's kind of what Sip was alluding to. They've already have that kind of ecosystem built into the way they operate, so they could easily just change those tokens, which everyone's got 1 million tokens now. They could just change that for something more unique. If that was like like I said, a foil spy token or something like that, that would have just instantly for no cost made things a lot more appealing. So they already have the facilities in place to make these changes, and I think that's ultimately the most frustrating thing about all of this is that there are other card games out there. Magic is struggling for other reasons, right? Reasons that are very, very difficult to overcome. Like SWU is struggling for some of the most easy. They have some of the easiest problems you could possibly imagine for a card game. Like because the core rules of the game are so amazing, and the top level like esports kind of side is getting a lot of people to play it. The problems they've got are piddly problems, but they're just not fixing them. So yeah, let's hope now to the Star Wars gods that they actually fix some of these easy to fix problems.
Yep. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. A very easy problem to solve for the most part, which gives us hope for the future, which makes us very hopeful. Because I think that even though FFG there's a lot of inertia. I think that's the problem. Is like there's too much inertia. I think the problem with FFG is that there's a lot of things they get wrong, even though those are easy things to get right. And so there's a lot of things that they don't get right on the first try. And the second problem is like there's a lot of inertia where whenever feedback comes in, it takes years, or it takes months, and sometimes even years for this to actually be implemented. And by that time, it might already be too late. But we cannot criticize them for not listening. I think FFG is doing a really good job at listening. It's just that it takes too long for them to implement that, and sometimes they just mess up very obvious things. Okay, so moving on to the next topic. As obviously the big topic right now is going to be rotation. And my question to you guys is, obviously, we are competitive players, so most likely we'll be playing both formats. We'll be playing both Eternal and Premiere. But in the long run, so I'm not talking about like immediately after the set 7 release, because obviously at the very beginning, we're probably mostly going to focus on Premiere because we might be sick of just playing with the same leader over and over again. We might want to actually try the new environment. This is where there's going to be the most new blood. There's going to be where there's the most things to test, at least in a short run. So, but I'm talking in the long run. So talking about maybe second half of 2026, 2027, 2028, assuming that FFG gives out a similar amount of support to both Eternal and Premiere, which one of the two formats are you the most likely to prefer? And I'm going to start with Al on this question.
So I was thinking about this question coming into the podcast. I was thinking, okay, well, in Magic, I played Limited and I always played Standard, right? And I've never really been interested in Modern or any of the older formats. Maybe just because I wasn't around when they were kind of invented or whatever. Maybe because like tournament support has always been so much more for Standard. It's always been like the primary sort of format. The World Championship for Magic has just happened, and that was obviously Standard and Draft for the Last Airbender set. So I think maybe the tournaments they choose to run just encourage you to go a certain way. So maybe that's why. But because I've always been a Standard player, I think that for me, I'm drawn much more towards Premier on the surface. Obviously, if they run lots of events for Eternal, as you said, then I'll play that too. But I do think that as I'm not really someone who looks at these kind of obscure leaders. You'll know obviously from testing with me on the team, I'm not someone who comes up with these really weird leaders that no one plays that are kind of bad, and they come up with a really cool new innovative deck. I'm more of someone who refines to the point of 100% whatever a deck, taking it from 95% perfect to 100% or whatever, rather than the other way around. So I think my kind of skill set and the way I like to approach the game lends itself more towards Premier. But on the other hand, Eternal has Sabine ECL, so maybe I'll just play that. Yes.
And there'll be Sabine too.
Exactly right. So I think I'll play both, and I'm interested in both. But I do think that because Eternal is much more of a vast ocean, and you can't really refine to the point where you know exactly what the top 5 meta decks are, and you're gonna perfect it against each one of those. It's more of a wide open field. I think my skills are more suited towards Premier, so I'm probably gonna focus on that really, and I prefer that format.
Okay, makes sense. Sip.
For me, it's gonna be definitely Premiere. Maybe in a really long run, maybe it will be different, but at least not for foreseeable future, even 2027 or whatever. I think it will be still Premiere, just because Premiere has more diversity. I would say when it comes to the meta flow from set to set, because with Eternal, you have a lot of sets in total, and the more of them you have, the less impactful they will be, unless there is power creep, which wasn't the case with the Unlimited so far. But like if anything, there was a power decreep. But yeah, the thing is with Premiere, like.
Okay, I'm
Because
just gonna
because
push
of
back
the
very
location-
quick on this first point that you made before you make your second point. Obviously nobody can know exactly how it's gonna happen for Star Wars Unlimited, but for Magic, the more cards, and excepted Vintage where it's bonkers because there's no ban list, but assuming the ban list is properly managed, Eternal formats like Modern Legacy are always more diverse than than Historic or Pioneer or Standards, and by a lot. Basically, the more cards you have in it, the more diversity you have. It's almost always the case, always been the case. And that's because you just have way more options, and the game just becomes more diverse. I mean, is it a good thing or a bad thing that the meta is more diverse? Not everybody thinks that a more diverse meta is necessarily a better meta, but definitely in terms of diversity, there's no reason to believe that Premiere will be more diverse than Eternal, and there's a lot of reason to believe that Eternal will be more balanced than Premiere on the long run. The more diverse.
Okay. Yeah, if that's gonna be the case, then sure. Like, to be fair, I didn't pay ever like attention that much to like Magic modern meta, so I have no knowledge about that. But yeah, if
just
that's the
quickly
case, then
say something as well. Sorry, just before you. Sorry to interrupt you there, Sip. I just wanted to say that my understanding of what you said there as well was that like between sets, there's a bigger change in Premier than there would be in Eternal. I think that's absolutely true.
Yep.
Even though there'll be more diversity of like decks you can face in Eternal because there's so many more things you can choose. Like every new set that comes out obviously has a very minor effect on Eternal, whereas it has a massive effect on Premier. So I think if you're looking for like change going from set to set, which is again is what I thought you said, then I think in that case the Premier is better for that reason.
Definitely.
New sets are obviously Draft is the ultimate version of that where every single set's completely different. But yeah.
That's the whole point of.
Yes.
By the way, that's the whole point of a Premiere format, is to make sure that every set has an actual impact on the meta. That's the whole point of having that format. So it's a way more dynamic by definition.
yeah. So like exactly what you said, Al. Like that was exactly the point that I was about to make.
Okay,
that
sorry.
I really like the part where like with new set you are maybe not forced, maybe that's the wrong word, but you're heavily incentivized to like try to play new things. And try to play new decks, because I personally am not the type of person who will play consistently the Merfolk deck from Magic or whatever, and just look at the new set with the idea, can I like fit one or two cards to my deck and nothing else.
Fair enough. Beton.
100% Premiere. I will most likely pick a deck for Eternal and stick to it, and just go to the tournament. But in every single game I played, I was the standard Premier, the new set guy. I just like new sets. I like for them to have an impact. I like building new wacky decks that work, and it's much harder into the open meta. I also really don't like heavily diverse metas. I like when there are different options. I don't like when there is like, oh, we have 7 decks that do some way of really big advantage when they combine a few cards, because it's much harder to like build really like fine sideboard or like small things that in a really established deck can help you win the matchups that were really hard. But I will still play every single big tournament for as long as the game is alive.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, so on my side, I'm gonna actually say something different than anybody else. I'm actually more in Magic, at least I'm more of an Eternal player. I play Modern and Legacy mostly, are my favorite formats, and Draft. And the reason is because I always found the standard format to be extremely boring. I found that in Magic at least, I found that the standard was just way too limited and way too small. to be fair, I think that the premiere formats in Star Wars Unlimited have been way better than the average standard format in Magic. So maybe, and there's also another thing that really was for me like a turn off in Magic, was that when I was playing Magic, I was not able to afford to buy all the new cards. And for me, the idea of spending $500 into a deck that's gonna rotate out and be absolutely almost worthless in 2 years was a very thing that was a big turn off. I would much rather spend 1K on a deck and then being able to resell that deck later on. So there was also like a financial thing. So that financial thing is not going to be a factor for Star Wars Unlimited because the game is dirty cheap, as we know. And I also have a full-time job now. I can afford those things, no problem. So that the financial part is going to be less of a factor. And also the meta factor is also, I think that FFG does a better job in terms of meta game compared to Magic for their Premier standards compared to Standard. So those two things are kind of gonna make me want to play Premier a lot more in Star Wars Limited. With that being said, I'm the kind of player I love the diversity of the different decks, not in terms of like the amount of leaders, but also in terms of gaming approach. I think that, for example, I love seeing very control-y deck. I love seeing combo decks. Notably, I'm a big combo guys. I love the dynamic of combo decks. That's why I like to play Modern and Legacy. I like playing against them, and as long as they are interactive, which in Modern they mostly are. And I think those decks are only possible and only buildable in a bigger return format. I think there's going to be more wild stuff going on. More diversity overall of different approach rather than just 50 shade of mid-range, which is kind of what we have right now. It's kind of just 50 shade of mid-range, and I don't think that's like super interesting. So this is less likely to be a thing in Eternal. So that's something that I'm attracted to. So ultimately, my answer is that I will see. It's going to depend mostly on the meta. But generally speaking, historically speaking, in card games, I've been more interested in internal formats. And I also believe that internal formats get better over time as more cards get added, because the numbers of combination becomes even wilder. And so it's gonna take time for the eternal format to really be there. And as we know, we don't know if Star Wars Unlimited is going to survive that long. It's all going to come down to 2026. I think I was saying this in one of my previous videos. 2026 is either going to make or break Star Wars Unlimited, and we'll see how it goes. But on the very long run, Eternal, I'm leaning more towards Eternal.
Just something to point out as well. I know you're also a father, Pierre, so you can relate to this somewhat, even though you chose Eternal. But I think keeping up to date with Eternal is going to require quite a big time investment, as you said, because the meta's so open, because there's so many different decks to kind of learn and everything. And like it's for me, it's hard enough managing like a job and kids, and then keeping up with both Premier and with Limited, because obviously Limited has such depth that you spend hours, you can spend hours and hours and hours learning that. So like I think another format on top of that is going to be quite hard. So for me, like even though like in theory it's like the peaks of Eternal, if you've got loads of time to put into it, the peaks are probably better than Premier. I do think that like Beton's point of maybe just picking a couple of decks that you're like good at, and then just kind of not really doing much more than that is probably where I'm gonna have to end up, just for time commitments, because we can only play so many formats.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I think I disagree with you though, that I think that Eternal is easier to keep up with than Premier, because it's less dynamic. It's changing. Eternal is kind of like you learn it once and then it evolves very slowly after that, so it's easier to keep up, because in every set there's only like a handful of cards that are actually going to be relevant to the format. So it's actually Eternal is easier to keep up with, as long as you're willing to make the initial investment.
Like if you the problem with it though, I think, is that like if you can't just choose to play Eternal and be a competitive player. Like there will almost certainly be more Premier tournaments, bigger Premier tournaments. The Galactic Championships will absolutely have a Premier component to it. So like it's not real that you can choose one or the other. You kind of have to play Premier, and then it's like, well, how much do can you commit to playing Eternal on top of that as well? Even though in theory your point's valid, I think that like I think the chances that we have a galactic championship that's entirely eternal is probably never going to happen, and it's certainly what happened for many years. So yeah, I think we're kind of forced to have Premier anyway.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, and this is where I think being in a team is gonna be very helpful. I think it would be really good to have part of the team that is more specialized in Eternal, and a part of the team that is more specialized in Premier. And this way, we can have like, whenever there's a big Eternal tournament coming up, the Premier guys can just come in and say, okay, just learn from the Eternal guys, and the other way around when a big Premier format is going to be. And I think being in a team can be very helpful in this.
Absolutely.
Okay, you guys are ready to move on to the next topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think the next topic, there's going to be a lot of discussion, there's going to be a lot of hot takes. But before we get into that, I just want to let you know that you can go on Card Market and pick up the Chancellor Palpatine for €2.75, almost €3 for a rare, and that's a rare that actually is available in the Spotlight deck. So pretty respectable price considering the circumstances. Chancellor Palpatine has still a lot of play, and but you get it and you can get it on Card Market for that amount. So we are getting into now the tier list of the set of Star Wars Unlimited. So we put all 6 sets of Star Wars Unlimited, and we're going to put them on a tier list. So this is, if you are on YouTube, you're going on this video, and you're watching this video, we're going to be showing off where we put those in the different tier list. If you are listening to us, we'll make sure to say out loud what the tier list looks like, so you can follow this even if you are not watching us right now, just listening to us. But we're going to break the rules of the podcast by actually showing a bit of video here and showing where we put those different things. So I'm actually going to share my screen with my comrades so they can see what is going on. Turn screen. Here we go. So you guys are seeing the tier list. Is all good?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. So this tier list, right? We're going to be ranking what are the best Star Wars Limited sets. I think it's a good moment to do this as we're heading to a 2026. This is the 6 sets of the first 2 years of the game, the first Premiere format. I think it's a great moment to actually take a look back at those different formats, and we are going to talk about those formats on every angle. So thematic, obviously there's categories that matters more to us than others. But basically, what was the constructed meta? Was it good for constructed meta? Was it in terms of mechanics? Was the mechanic good? Were the cards cool? And was it like also in terms of limited format as well? Was the limited format for this specific set good or not? And we're going to S to D, and we're going to try to find a consensus here. It's going to be hard because we all have very different opinions. But let's get into it. First of all, let's start with the first set, of course, Spark of Rebellion. Sip, where are you placing Spark of Rebellion and why?
So I think it's fair to say that Spark should belong in one of the higher tiers at least. Like it's either A or S for me. Just because like it was really good when it comes to like the foundation of the game. It didn't have like any crazy mechanics, but that's what first set is kind of meant to be. One thing that became kind of a problem with Spark, like in the long run, is that the power level of Spark is just higher than a lot of the following sets. But I don't think that's necessarily a problem with Spark necessarily. It's more of a problem with the other sets, I would say. So
Agreed.
Yeah, the limited was good. Boba was kind of a problem, but to be fair, in first set, like meta-wise, Krennic was able to like fight with the Boba, and there were some other decks as well. So meta was also okay, and because of that, I think it's fair to say that the Spark is S tier.
Okay, yeah, I think I can't disagree. Just for context, I gave Spark of Rebellion an 8 point in my set review. I gave this Spark of Rebellion 8.5, but keep in mind I do those ratings not knowing what's gonna come after, so it's always difficult. If I had to rank it today, I would give it this a 9 out of 10. So obviously very, very high. Beton, what are your thoughts on Spark? Do you agree for the S tier?
Oh, easily S tier, easily the best set we ever had, and we'll probably ever have.
Oh, that
And
is
it's
sad to say, man.
and it's not because there won't be a better set, but because we will never have a single set game ever. And as I said, I like standard. I especially like limited amount of cards when you can use swoop racer to win tournaments. So yeah, for me, we will never have it back, and it will always be my favorite set.
Yes, I mean
Yeah,
it's
just
sorry. Go ahead, Sip.
yeah. So like just for context as a joke, because I don't know if we like ever said that, but the reason why we are even called Super Racers is actually because we literally play the card Super Racer in our Boba list, in our like late set one deck list, and we like play that card in showdowns, and we like were winning the showdowns with it, which was kind of funny thing.
Yeah, and showdowns back then were quite competitive.
Yes, like there were like the best, like the biggest events that you could like hope for. I guess there were like some organized like tournaments, but they were like not like official per se.
Yeah, take
Or,
the
like,
initiative,
the
bro.
official-
TTI.
Yeah, TTI as well, I guess. In TTI, I think we even played the Super Racer, maybe, or I don't
Yeah.
know. Like,
Yeah, we did.
Awesome. Al, what do you think about Spark of Rebellion?
Yeah, so a few things I want to say. Obviously, you guys have covered it really well. I agree with basically everything you said. For me, like the meta that is a result of the set is only a very small part of it because, at the end of the day, like one card can kind of ruin a meta, and then but I still don't think that makes that a bad set. Boba was too powerful for sure, and it would have been better if he was weaker. But he I don't think he really like ruined the set for me at all. The set is incredible. It's so well balanced. And by the way, it's not a mistake that it's like that, right? Because they spent more time developing this set than any other. I'm almost certain of it. So that's just how the first sets go. So there's a good reason why it's such a well-designed set. They had more time to do it. But yeah, the set's so well designed. There's control decks, there's mid-range decks, there's aggro decks. It gave us Sabine. Sabine's the perfect aggro leader. She epitomizes aggro. She's great. And yeah, I think that the set it was amazing. It was amazing as the first set for the game, and honestly, my hopes were so high back then because we had not only did it look as though we had the best core mechanics of any card game I've ever played. And again, it's not like they came up with that out of nowhere. Star Wars Unlimited's got such amazing core mechanics because they've taken all the good things from other card games and shoved them into one game. There's very little that's original about the game, but who cares? Because the core mechanics are so good. And then the set design also looks incredible. And my hopes were so high at this point. I thought, you know what? They've got the perfect core rules. They've got amazing card design. What could go wrong? And it turns out that the design does. Spoiler alert: the design does fall off, but yeah, the design was amazing. It was an amazing first set to the game, and I think that, it was basically, I think 9 out of 10 is a fair rating. It was almost perfect, and I can't remember any other set of any other card game I think that came close to this for me. It just had everything. I think the fact that it was a one set meta helped as well, but obviously we do have a limited for that every set, so I don't think it's like we don't have a place. You can always play a one set game in any given moment with limited, and I think that's the role of that. So I'm not begroaning as much as Beton is. But yeah, I also, just for me personally, like this was the time when there was kind of a period between the start of the game. I played with my friend. He actually played in some of the tournaments. He's known online as Blurp Snoop, and I played a lot with him at the time. And it was a really, really fun time. We played on Tabletop Simulator. We played, obviously before the cards were even revealed of the set. It was a really fun time, and it gave me a home outside of other card games that I was so fed up with, like Magic and other card games. And it was a really, really happy time, and it was, the whole future was ahead of me at that point. And then until I kind of joined Team Enigma and this was formed, there was a bit of a gap there for a few sets where I just I didn't really have a home, and I was enjoying the game less. So again, things have picked up now that I've got a team that I can really enjoy. But yeah, it was just a really happy time, and I think part of that was just such an amazing set that they designed. So definitely S tier, 100%.
Yep. Well, I have a bit of a different story with Spark of Rebellion because I started playing Star Wars Unlimited in September 2023. So that means I have effectively 8 months of Spark of Rebellion more than you guys. I think because most of you started playing the game either during release or just slightly before. And
fun fact, I started at that time as well. We started in the same.
Oh, okay, never mind then. Yeah, we
yeah.
I'm the only one who started at the pre-release.
What a noob. Yeah. So yeah, and I mean the thing is with Spark of Rebellion, right? It's it is the best first set I've ever played in any card game. We already said that. I think what makes this set really really good was that they were like four first set. Once again, four first set. The meta was very diverse, and they did a great job at implementing like counters to things even within the set. Like there were counters. Like for example, they were super laser blast, but but they were also relentless and the Emperor's Legion, like in the same set. Like the just everything was just very well engineered. There's the only misstep, as we said earlier, is the Boba Fett. It's a set that that started it all, and I think it was a great set. I just also point out that everybody here put an S tier. I just want to point out that Spark of Rebellion was the meta where Heart Control was the most powerful by far. And coincidence? It's the best set. Is it a coincidence? I don't know.
There's an issue of causation and a correlation there. I think.
Yeah.
It's a symptom of a good set. But,
exactly. There's a correlation between how good is Heart Control and how beloved the set is. I'm just saying that. I'm just pointing out there.
This is one of the moments when like the fact that Thorrk is like saying at the very end things is like the most beneficial for him.
Yeah, he was at his peak then in Spark of Rebellion. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, my in terms of performance, my peak was Twilight of the Republic. But anyway.
Ooh, yeesh. Okay.
No, I had some good. I was doing good in Spark of Rebellion as well, but I mean there were not a lot of big tournaments, so it was harder to gauge that. But I think I've won every single in real life events that I've played in Spark. But they were only small events back then, so. Cool. Moving on to Shadow of the Galaxy. Beton, what do we think about Shadow of the Galaxy? Sorry, I just want to go back to Spark of Rebellion very quick. Nobody has talked about, but one of the things that also makes Spark really special, especially compared to the other set, was how much fun it was to open. The fact that the legendaries were good in that set made the set so much more fun to open, actually. We haven't talked about this at all, but I think it was a big factor as well. It was a home run on constructed play, on limited play, and also on the booster opening experience / collecting. Just wanted to point this out.
Yeah, the only thing is, it was hard to get your hands on, but like that was the only negative I think about it.
Yeah, but that's a symptom of its success. Like it's a symptom of its popularity, and also for Spet, I always kind of front where there's a lot of scalpers and stuff.
But they also thought about it, and like for example, in my local stores, everybody was going to every single weekly event because it was the only way to get packs.
Nice. That's the dream.
But I mean, there's some advantages too. There needs to be a middle ground between how they print the set, like overprinting versus underprinting. There needs to be some level of scarcity for and they need to find the right balance. And I feel like Star Wars Unlimited, since after Spark of Rebellion, has just been overprinted. Like they just are printing too much of it across the board. Okay,
so Shadows of the Galaxy. Like this is the set that introduced my favorite leader, so Han Solo worth the risk. It was also the set that, even though had lower power level, it still had really iconic cards that we still use and still play.
Blaster.
What?
Blaster.
Yeah. A Poe Wrecker. I had a blast playing this set. I think it's not at the same level as Spark, but from set to set, I've got to the point of loving much more cards than I expected from the set. Cards that were underplayed when it released got so much better later. Like even for example Rival's Fall, that was kinda nowhere to be seen when it released, and now it's a really good staple that can be used to counter many different things. And for me, it's probably close second to Spark. I would put it in A, mostly because it's the set that started the legendaries not being as exciting trend. But other than that, I think the meta was good, the set was good, even the leaders from the set were actually really impactful.
Yeah, no, leaders were very strong. Sip, what do you think about Shadow of the Galaxy?
So I think I'm a little bit lower on the Shadow. So for sure, like Hantu is like a really fun leader, at least for me at battle. Like there are people who don't like it just because of like the nature of like cheating with the resources. Like it's kind of broken-ish. But yeah, I remember like when I saw the spoiler, I DM'd Beton on like the and sent him the card. We were like, okay, we're testing this guy. He seems super strong. And like I remember like the following day we played the Han ECL. We built the deck actually back then, and like we actually really liked the deck already back then.
Something I want to say about Hantu very quick is that the reason why people don't like Hantu, and myself included, I mean, I think he's fine, but people, the problem they have with him is that he's too generally powerful. Like, he doesn't need any... His ratio, for me, a leader has to either be medium powerful, but then doesn't need any build around, or very powerful but needs strong build around. The problem of Hantu is like he's both very powerful and need no build around. And I also think he's not as interesting as An1 personally, even though he does something a little bit similar.
For me, the thing about Hantu is that I really liked him back then. Like set 3, he wasn't really existing because of the Django. Set 4, I also really liked him. I stopped liking him as much in like post set 5 because like Grogu, Ogdo, those cards like make him like super strong. Like in the first 4 sets, like he wasn't as like I would say like game breaking with his ability. Like that's my thing with the Han. And
that was
like,
Takitan meta mostly. Like the especially in Twilight, the Takitan was everywhere.
Yeah, so that's why I said that like the deck wasn't really functioning, but I like the period at the start of the Shadows, so like the September-ish territory. But then the like early October, late September tournament happened when Ysera won with Boba 30 HP, and from that point on, I really didn't like the Shadows meta. Like that was my problem because like Boba was everywhere, and I know like maybe meta should be like a point like a huge part of like rating the set, but I really didn't like that meta where like it was all about like Boba mirrors. Boba mirrors were skillful to some extent, but I personally didn't like that much. The overall like theme of Shadows was something that I enjoyed, so it's really hard for me to judge this set. For me, it's like between like A tier or B tier, but yeah, I'm not really sure where I would put it. Probably like closer to the B tier, but yeah, I can be convinced easily that it's an S tier.
So we got
it's an A tier.
So we got Sip on B and we got Beton on A. We'll see where we land after. Well, Al and I will be the tiebreakers, but I completely agree with you. I think Ysera basically ruined Shadow of the Galaxy meta. Like the meta, I remember the meta was actually pretty good. It was the first boss blue actually appeared in this first half of and then Ysera basically won Manchester with that crazy Boba build, and then from that point on, the format got completely ruined. I'll explain more a bit why later on, but first of all, I want to hear what Hal thinks about the Shadow of the Galaxy.
Yeah, so it's you know what's funny? It would have been interesting in my mind. I know you can kind of do this because you can look back at your videos and think, you know, what did I do? But you know how I would have rated it if we were just 2 sets in, because I remember at the time when Shadows of the Galaxy came out, I did actually think the set seemed it was a bit like meh. But like nowadays, because I've had so many sets that I think are much worse, I think that looking back, it was actually quite a good set, and I think it was a pretty good first set. I
can answer that question for you. I rated Shadow of the Galaxy back then 4 out of 10, which is outrageous in context. But
I'm assuming now you'd give it like a 7 or more.
No, right now I would rate it a 5 or a 6. Really? Right now.
Okay.
But
Well,
basically 4 out of 10 back then was just, once again, as you said, exactly what you said. It was in comparison to Spark,
Yeah.
basically.
we didn't know how good we had things until
Yeah, exactly.
until we got worse. But yeah, I mean, honestly, some of the cards from this set still see loads of plays. They're still iconic. You know, Gar Saxon's an awesome leader in my opinion. Kira, I think, is an amazing leader. Like, she's so interesting to play against and with. She's awesome. You know, we got, like I said, we got Hantu, which is an iconic leader. I think he is really interesting personally. Cad Bane, Bosk, Ray, so many of these like leaders that still see play today. We got amazing control tools which we never get. We got Pershing, you know, one of the best cards in the game when played on turn one. Snoke, you know, still one of the very best top end cards in the game. But there's just so many cards from this set. I mean, there were like things they messed up. You know, obviously at this point it wasn't a problem, but Triple Dark Raiders turned out, you know, it did turn out to be a problem eventually. But you know, for Sabine, you know, Cassian, Darksaber, Poe, Wrecker, the core of Sabine has stayed the same now for 5 sets because of the core of cards that were given to her. And at no point, in my opinion, has she ever been broken, even with those powerful cards. It's meant that we've always had a good, solid aggro deck you can always go to and play. And even though people might be bored of playing against her, I think it's good to it's important to have these like consistent decks like Kira and things like that. So yeah, the set was awesome. I think the theme was cool. Again, at the time, I was a bit down on it just because, you know, again, coming off Spark of Rebellion. But in hindsight, I think I'd be really happy if every set had carried on like a similar level to this. There was enough powerful cards that still see play. I would have liked to have seen a bit more power in the set, but again, you know, compared to what came afterwards, like I think this is perfectly acceptable. The legendaries, while yes, you know, they weren't great, if they would have stayed at this level, I honestly don't think we would have been talking about it like as a massive problem, like a game-ending problem that we are now. I think it would have been like, well, you know, it'd be better if some more legendaries were good, but there were a lot of good legendaries. Snoke, Poe, you know, Darksaber. There was I think 5 or 6 really good legendaries that you wanted, you know, play set of. So yeah, I think the set was in hindsight really, really good, and I think to me it's an obvious A tier set. Nowhere near as good as Spark Rebellion, but you know, if every set was like this moving forward, I don't think we would have almost any complaints about the design of the game. For me personally.
Okay, so I'm gonna.
Sorry, just one quick one. Sorry. Also, the best mechanic they've ever released in the game was this set, Smuggle.
Yes, I was gonna say that. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, beloved by everybody. You know, it is literally to me the perfect mechanic. Nobody ever really thinks. You know, I mean, people complain about everything, but realistically, 90% of people don't complain about it as a mechanic. It's a value mechanic. You see it sees play in lots of different archetypes. I think it's an amazing, amazing mechanic, and I don't think they'll almost ever. It's very unlikely they're going to top that mechanic. I think. And yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
I also want to add, you mentioned Smuggle. Smuggle is one of my favorite mechanics, but I actually also really like Bounty.
Yeah.
I think
Bounty is very good too. Yeah.
It's perfectly captures for me Star Wars, and it's really well implemented. And even though in the end there was not enough cards to make it like really relevant for most of the time, but we still see we still see some important bounty cards even now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, Bounty was really cool mechanic. So I think that, so basically I know because I made a video about it, so I do remember the negative a bit more than you guys do, because I've actually reviewed my video pretty recently about Shadow of the Galaxy. And one of the negatives that you guys haven't talked about is that, yes, there were some mechanics that were very successful, like Smuggle's best mechanic we've ever seen in the game, that's for sure. But also was a lot of mechanics and archetypes. One of my big criticisms of Shadow of the Galaxy is that it didn't introduce any new archetype to the game. It just basically improved upon existing archetypes. So basically the meta of Shadow of the Galaxy fared very much the same as the one of Spark of Rebellion, just with more stuff. We basically had Kira replacing Krennic. We got Sabine got a lot better. We got Boba got a lot better. And then I think the only real new thing was like the Hantu archetypes, that kind of like the Hantu/Rey archetypes, which kind of were the new Chirrut and the new Luke, but there was the same color combination. It was not really a new archetype. All the Smuggle as an archetype did not exist. Bounty as an archetype only existed mostly through how's it called? Through Bosk, and nowadays we might consider this to be okay, but for a set that basically added 100% more cards to the meta, adding no new archetype other than Bounty is not really satisfactory. and that was one of the big criticisms I have with this set back when it was released. So obviously in hindsight now, it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal, but when you think about that this set basically doubled the amount of cards available in the game, the impact that it had on the meta was kind of like, oh yeah, it just made existing decks very strong.
Can I just quickly jump in with something there, just very quickly to that point?
Yeah.
Because I think you might move on. Something that Sip mentioned right at the very beginning of this discussion that I think he made a point about how Spark Rebellion's power level has been so much higher than all the other sets, and like that's the fault of the other sets. I mean, honestly, power level is relative, right? There's nothing nothing would have been worse about the game if the power level of Spark had have been lower, really, because it's all relative. So if Spark of Rebellion, if we let's say we make Spark of Rebellion out to be its S tier set, and it was for lots of reasons, but just looking at the power level of alone, yes, they could have made set 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stronger. But if set 1 had have just been relatively weaker, then a lot of these problems would have gone away, because at the end of the day, like I said, back in set 2 it felt quite bad because a lot of the set 2 cards weren't seen play, or like you said, they weren't changing the way the game was played in any major way. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of that is because Spark of Rebellion was just so relatively, and it's all relative, it can go either way. So I don't think you can necessarily put that on all the future sets just because Spark came first, because obviously they were kind of designed at a similar time. I mean, the first 3 sets were designed together in a sense.
Yeah, but no, they were not. Spark was still designed first.
It was still first. It was still first, yes, but they hadn't released it. It hadn't been finished. It hadn't been stamped off until they started working on the other sets. So it wasn't like it was a complete separate entity. And then just in terms of the archetype thing, you can think of it maybe as a bit of a slow burner. I know you said at the time it didn't impact the meta as much as we would have liked, and that's true. But think about the archetypes that have continued on because of this. Gar Saxon is his own archetype and still sees play today.
Yeah, but when Shadow of the Galaxy, my point as well is like Shadow of the Galaxy pushed in a lot of different direction, and there were a lot of things like, think about the capture thing. Capture basically as an archetype completely flumble. The Mandalorian archetype completely flumble. Completely.
A lot of these archetypes have grown into being really cool stuff. At the end, maybe at the time they weren't good, but like Gar Saxon and Cad
well, Gar Saxon is kind of
the
the exception because he's not really playing with upgrade. He's playing with just shielded units. So
yeah, but that's a unique thing that no other leader does, right? Cad Bane, the whole Underworld package, Han Solo.
Yeah, Cad Bane is a good example, though. Yeah,
they've all gone on to lots of these leaders have gone on to play the game in a unique way, and it took more sets for them to really realize the full potential. But at the end of the day, are we going to be looking back at Jump to Lightspeed pilots and thinking, in 5 sets they're going to be amazing for the game? I don't think so. So I do feel like these leaders, they laid the groundwork for a really good future. Even though at the time maybe they weren't that good.
I think Shadow of the Galaxy is like the quintessential fine wine archetype, fine wine set. It's a set that started pretty mild, and it aged like fine wine, basically.
Yeah.
One other negative that, once again, we tend to forget because that's a thing of the past, but Shadow of the Galaxy, can we all agree that Boba Fett's armor and Boba Fett's armor and TIE Phantoms, but even more so Boba Fett's armor, is one of the most stupidest card ever designed. What a dumb card. And this
every set has these cards.
No. Actually, it's funny because I actually, in every my set review, I actually talk about my least favorite card of the set, and this one is and not every set has a horrible card. For example, Legend of the Falls did not have a horrible card like this. Jump to Lightspeed had one, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure. Twilight of the Republic also did not have a horrible card in terms of negative impact, because no other cards had any impact. Anyway.
And I will say it's not true. I think Twilight had an awful design card that I personally hate. Now there are 2 of them.
Now there's 2 of them?
Yeah, it's one of the designs I really hate.
Okay, I disagree. I don't mind it. Yeah.
Because I think it's a mechanic that go, I got my combo on turn 2. Good luck.
I get what you mean. But at the meantime, it doesn't win the game as decisively as something like. It actually does require you to build your deck around it, which I think is cool. And also, it doesn't win the game as decisively as something like it's not like oh yeah you got this you win the game. No, it's a little bit like You're My Only Hope. It's even weaker than You're My Only Hope. Like, do you really feel like whenever you pull off You're My Only Hope against Yoda, it's a powerful play, yes, but it's not like a game-winning play.
Like for me, Boba Armor, You're My Only Hope in Yoda. Now there are two of them. Is not really that because it doesn't synergize with a specific leader. It kind of does because it's mostly in Cat Bane, but for me I just don't like designs that work in this way.
Oh yeah.
Even though I
you don't
I
like fun.
have-
You don't like combos basically.
I have fun.
You don't
No,
like fun.
I have fun with them. I just don't like them in the meta.
Yeah, but you know.
What did you give it then? A or a B? Because we're split. If you've given it a B, we're split.
No, I gave it A.
No, I meant PS. Sorry.
Yeah. So I would give it a B, but now we'll split on 2 Bs and 2 As. But since Sip was slightly gearing towards A, maybe we'll give it A. What do you guys think? Are we giving A or B?
I think it's an A. Yeah.
I think
Yeah, I think A is fair.
Okay, let's put in
I
A.
think it will be only one in A.
But yeah, so no, I disagree. I think Now There's Two of Them is a pretty cool card, but it's once again it's a taste and subjective taste, I guess.
I don't want to make. It's not like I don't like combo. One of my favorite things is finding stupid synergies between cards and exploiting it. I just specifically don't like Now There Are Two of Them because it's turn 2 synergy. I also, for the same reason, don't like General's Blade.
Oh, General Blade sucks.
No, it's not in the same way.
That's
at
because
all, in my
upgrades
opinion.
suck. That's
No,
just
like,
'cause upgrades suck.
but for me, General's Blade and Now There Are Two of Them is really similar because they both, it's a turn 2 play. If you have a specific turn 1 play, they just win you the game.
Yeah, all in. Yeah, all in. Plus, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think I personally don't feel the same way about General's Blade compared to Now There's Two of Them.
Yeah. General's Blade is just so much more powerful than.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. But like, yeah. Anyways, so we got Shadow of the Galaxies in A tier. It's a fine Y. It started pretty low and then it got better and better. I think Al, you made some excellent points. You got Cat Bane, you got Garsaxon. Those leaders didn't really see much play when the set first came out. So the set at first felt kind of meh, but it just got so much better over time. And also, I want to say, we haven't talked about this, but I think in Limited, this set was also very fun. I have keen memories of this set in Limited.
But it also started the experienced leader is better than everything else Limited.
Yeah, but at least in this set, getting the experience token actually required some effort. Like your Ondo Naka, for example, you actually have to work for it and build your deck around it.
Thinking mostly about Ray.
I was thinking about Ray.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
To be fair, with like the limited problem with like Ray, I would say that limited was actually balanced with like Hunt 2 being really good. I think Cat Bane was also like really good in limited. So like even though Ray was like experienced leader, with the context of the other leaders, she was okay in limited. I wouldn't say that she was as strong as
yeah.
Completely agree.
I think Draft Limited was amazing. Field was a little bit problematic because Ray was just there was like 20 cards that could only work in Ray, and it was too easy to build a sealed pool with her. But yeah, Draft was really good in Shadows.
Yeah, but to be fair, with that problem, like with the problem of 20 cards being playable only in Ray, like this will be the problem with all of the experienced leaders that pay 1 for giving experience token to a unit, like Snoke, Leia.
It's the problem with any leader that has a playable 1 cost ability because they make 1-drops playable. So yeah, that is, but especially experience tokens, yeah. But it's a problem we're going to have over time and time again in Star Wars Limited, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, set 3.
Moving on to Twilight of the Republic, and this time I'm gonna start with Sip. Sip, what do you think about Twilight of the Republic?
Oh, Twilight is hard. So like I remember like when the set dropped, like the power level of cards was just so low, and like that makes the set probably not look that good. Just on its own, because not only like the power levels was bad, but like all of the new mechanics, like both coordinate and exploit, were super weak. Like there were only a handful of cards that were playable, and yeah, that was like a huge problem.
what saved kind of Twilight was ban of Boba, because that actually like refreshed the meta really really well, because like I mentioned, like in the later stages of the Shadows it was kind of a problem that we had the Boba, but because of the ban I actually kind of liked the meta, the constructed meta of Twilight. There were leaders that were better, that were strong, like Han One Yellow was like really strong. Like the interaction with DJ was like kind of was oppressive for many decks, but I would say it was still kind of manageable. So that was one thing, and like other decks, I feel like I like the other decks. Like I really like the Django from Twilight, but yeah, like with the context of like the whole set being not great, like with like the new mechanics being bad, and also like limited being terrible. Like I feel like if we are speaking about like the worst limited experience, I feel like Twilight was by far the worst experience, because not only like Anakin was super strong, like he was a leader that doesn't require, that is not experienced leader, that is like super strong in limited. So like there is one thing with like how he can like create those oppressive traits, but the problem about that was that power level of all of the other leaders wasn't that high. Like Quinlan was fine and some other leaders, but Obi-Wan maybe was okay in limited, but Anakin was just so far ahead of the others. Like limited was terrible. Like I literally, whenever I was playing like drafts or like things like that, we just agreed on like swapping Anakins for Ahsokas whenever someone pulled that, and that at that point the limited was fine. But if you have to do it manually, like non-officially, then yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, I completely agree with
So
this. What you said about swapping, and we did the same in our community. But I would argue that once you do that, the format is actually very fun and actually plays very differently. Like the swarm coordinate thing, like once you make that change, the limited format is actually pretty good. But I agree that
yeah,
obviously we're gonna take this into account into we rate this. So how would you rate Twilight Republic on the tier list?
I would say it's probably C tier, maybe like somewhere again between like C and B, but probably like quite heavily leaning towards C tier. And I agree with the limited part that you mentioned. And one funny thing is that I like remember like because like the power level of Twilight is low. Like I remember like, oh, I'm playing a 2 mana 2/2 minion. Like it's okay minion in Twilight. Like that was super funny. Like 2 mana 1/3, which like in even in context of limited in other sets, like this seems really bad. And limited in Twilight was actually fine.
Okay.
Playing vanilla 1/4 as a turn 1 play was perfect
Oh.
turn 1 play for Anakin.
Yeah.
Everything is fine. So, Sip, what do you think about Twilight Republic?
Who? Because I
Yeah,
think
probably someone else. Yeah, I just said that it's C tier, so I don't know, maybe someone else. Beton.
No, yeah, so
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I meant I don't know. I said Sip, but I mean Beton.
yeah, okay. Like for me, this set was really bad. Like really, really bad. Meta was cool, but it had nothing to do with the set.
True.
I think the set introduced almost zero playable cards. When I think the most played card competitively from this set is like Perilous Position.
P38.
Or P38. I don't think there is a single like really good legendary aside from
Cad Bane.
Cad Bane that should have been in the previous set. Yet I remember going into my local tournaments, opening the packs and just having like, oh, another 30 cents pack. And yeah, I think having strong first two sets saved it. And ban of the Boba, I think, was the biggest savior, because I think if they didn't ban Boba, the game might have lost a lot of players during that time.
Very true.
So yeah, for me the set was I don't remember it fondly. The limited was bad. The meta was basically set to meta with a ban. The only good thing about the set is, I think, for constructed. The leaders were actually decent.
They're very strong,
There are
actually.
still played leaders like Anakin, like Yoda, Django Quinlan, and I think Chancellor Palpatine showed that they can create really interesting designs that are not broken but are playable. Another really terrible design in the set were bases. Most of them are unplayable. This set, I think, is the first set that Droid Manufactory might be playable, but it's still like a D tier competitive deck. So yeah, no, for me it's a clearly C tier, just because I need a space below for one more set.
Spoilers.
That's kind of, yeah.
There could be
That's
multiple
kind of
set.
like-
There could be
yeah.
multiple sets in the same
No.
in the same tier.
No. I need to have something. If I could, there would be 2 places below, but
That's kind of why I wanted to put the Twilight on B tier.
but yeah, I think C is perfect for Twilight.
Okay.
And by the way, like one thing that Beton said, like you said that bases were terrible. Like I feel like you cannot be like too harsh about the bases because they were not designed for constructed. They were designed for the Twin Suns, which like I don't think they even like work that way on Twin Suns. I'm not super sure like how.
No, they don't, because
we find there, but-
playing with any less than the maximum HP possible in Twin Suns is horrible.
Yeah, but maybe there will be like some sort of like like in later like where the extra HP or extra power gives you something actually because you have 2 leaders or something. But yeah, we'll
It's
see.
good for Bale. It's good for the new Bale from Secret of Power.
Yeah, it is.
Al, what do you think about Twilight of the Republic?
So first, the good stuff. The ban list was introduced. Great, you know. If they had, like I said, if they hadn't have done that, it could have been a disaster. So that's great. The leaders, I think, were solid. Nothing to complain about there. There were enough good leaders. You know, Yoda has proved in time again to aged really well. Really cool leader nowadays. Obviously, Anakin again has been good for a while, but really good now. Django, you know, was too powerful, but I think again it introduced it, so there wasn't a power level problem there in Quinlan. So good leaders. The bases, I think, are absolutely fine. They're too weak, but the whole set is too weak, so I think that's just in line with that. The bases are actually interesting, more interesting, I think, than some of the bases that have come since. So yeah, I think the bases were actually really cool. It's just they weren't strong enough. There's about 5 playable cards in the entire set, like we played today, which is, there's like Devastating Gunship, like General's Blade, Perilous, and like I think a couple of others. But what's the Plo Koon, the ambush one? But even Cad Bane doesn't seem much play anymore really. But yeah, I think that's just because the colours is in. But yeah, the set was embarrassingly weak. Like I think it cannot be understated how much damage this did to the game, in my opinion.
Yes.
I think that this was the set that you might not like mechanics, and we'll get to jump to Lightspeed and things like that in future sets. But like even though like there are other sets maybe with worse mechanics, like game design wise, this is the set that I think did the real damage to the game. And yeah, I remember, like I said, being in this set turned me off collecting Star Wars Unlimited. Really, now nowadays I kind of buy what I need to buy. At the time, set 1, set 2, I bought a lot of boxes. I was collecting a lot of cards. I was really into it. This set killed off all the hype I had for collecting this game because and obviously ever since, like, there hasn't really been that much of a reason to collect the game. And I think this really did a huge damage to the game, and it hasn't really recovered in my mind because they haven't fixed the problems this set introduced. The power level of this set was unbelievably low. Like in my set review for this set, the strongest card in the set I think was Perilous Position at the time, and Perilous Position should not be the strongest card in any set. It shouldn't be, never. So I think that the set was just way too weak. Again, leaders are fine, but the limited experience obviously was dreadful. And that change, the most upsetting thing, is that unofficial change of going Ahsoka and swapping Ahsoka and Anakin. Sip said earlier on in this podcast, he was talking about how what they could do with Leia is make her the starter deck leader, and then that would fix the kind of balance problems. Make the experience token leaders the starter deck ones. The problem with that is it might not always fit thematically. There might be the starter decks have to be like competing against each other. That's the whole point of the theme of the starter decks. The thing is, Anakin does fight against General Grievous in the same way that Ahsoka does, right? So that it wouldn't have hurt the theme at all. Not at all. It would have fixed the limited format. And it obviously only really wasn't a huge problem because people could unofficially change it. But if there were tournaments, if there was a regional qualifier in limited at the time, it would have been the worst tournament we probably ever had or ever would have. So if they made a set as bad as this nowadays, it would be an absolute travesty. If set 7 is like Jump to Lightspeed, I think the game could survive. If set 7 is like Twilight Republic, I think the game would die. Honestly, I think it would kill off all enthusiasm for this game. We're at a really pivotal point, and if they make a set this bad again, I think I'm out. So yeah, for me, this is rock bottom of D tier. I don't think they could ever make a set this bad again. Probably, I think it was. I don't know what went wrong, but everything was wrong about this set. The mechanics were dreadful. They just didn't come together at all. You talked about capture wasn't that good last set, and bounties were. The thing is, like the mechanics in this set, none of them were even close to being. Have never been close to being playable. Like they were so bad. So yeah, if it wasn't for some of the leaders being good, and honestly some of them being too good, like Django, then this set would have had absolutely nothing to give. So yeah, I think this is the worst set ever printed, and this is one of the worst sets of any card game I've ever played as well. Which is funny because like I said, Spark Rebellion
that's a hot
one of
take.
the best. It's one of the best sets of any, probably the single best set of any card game I've ever played. I can't remember ever playing a card game and having a set that was this unimpactful.
Well, there are certain Magic that are far worse than Twilight. Probably.
Yeah, well, I didn't play every set of Magic, so yeah, I'm sure there are. But yeah, in the card games I've played and the sets I've played, none of them have been as unimpactful as this set.
Anyway, so
I just want because I don't want to forget it. There is really funny story with cards from this set because we actually had a legendary from this set in the Galactic Championship deck, and amount of people that when I played it had to take up the card and to read it. What it actually does was like 75% of players.
Ayla Sakura, is it?
And that
Yadimundi.
yeah, it was Kia Dimundi.
Oh, okay. Mundi was solid. But...
Yeah, it's a good. Like, it is a good card, but no, like it was that unplayable before that most people just forgot that it exists. So,
Yeah. So yeah, no, very good points. I'm just gonna add up a couple of one positive that nobody mentioned and one negative that nobody mentioned. One positive that nobody mentioned was the theme. I think that Twilight of the Republic had one of the coolest theme because it was the Clone Wars, and it was one of the only sets in the game. Most of the sets in the game are kind of multi-era, when they are across multi-eras in Star Wars. Well, this one was the only one that was really focused on one specific era, and I think this made the theme of this set really nice. And that's the reason why a lot of people, notably casual players, were very excited about this set from a thematic standpoint. So I think the theme was really nailed really well. I think the tokens, you really, it's especially when you play limited, it really felt like you had a war when you get like all those tokens going on. I think that was really well done, like the theme into the mechanics. But to be fair, this is one of the easiest thing to do as a designer for a game, so I'm not going to give them too much credit for that. One negative that you guys have not mentioned is that there's a moment where yellow, so before basically Twilight of the Republic, Boba Fett was too strong, but the colors were fairly balanced in terms of how they were seeing play. Twilight of the Republic tilted that balance because every single card, with the exception of Paris Position, every single good card introduced by Twilight of the Republic were yellow. No, now there's two of them: P38, Plo Koon, Cad Bane. All the good cards were yellow, and from that point on, yellow was the dominant color in Star Wars Unlimited, and it only stopped when Django got banned. So yellow was like super heavily dominant during that period, and that's because Twilight of the Republic kind of tilted that balance, and that was another very big negative. For me, I agree with 100% with everything Al said. This set was by far the most damaging set for the game health in terms of population. So many people dropped the game at that time, and for that reason it deserved to be D tier in my view. So for me, I'll put it on D tier. But we got 2 people putting it on D tier, 2 people putting it on C tier, so we're gonna have to vote again. Are we putting this D tier or C tier?
Let me just quickly say this just to potentially sway Beton. Don't forget that this is the set that's responsible for General's Blade as well. One of the only cards that still sees play to this day is General's Blade. So if you hate General's Blade as much as you say you do, then
I
put
do.
it in D tier.
I only wanted it in C because I want to put something below it.
No way, we know that. Yeah. So it's gonna be.
I have a suggestion. Let's do it like this. Let's leave it in the D tier and add and another tier below that.
Okay, but we might
And
not
we can
agree.
call it
We-
already JTL.
okay. We'll do that if everybody agrees to it.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah,
only if everybody
sure.
agrees to it. Which brings us to jump to Lightspeed, and I think there's going to be some spicy discussion around this set because I think it's a set that is very polarizing because I think it does certain things very very well, and it does certain things very very poorly. There's a lot of good and bad. It's a very mixed bag. Let's get on to Beton on this set. Let's bring the hate.
Okay, so not like a lot, maybe also.
So sorry,
people know
just
it.
a little summary before we get in. So for people who are hearing us as podcast, for now, Spark of Rebellion S tier, Shadow of the Galaxy A tier, and Twilight of the Republic is D tier. That's what we have right now.
So if people listen to us, they might know that I think piloting is the worst mechanic ever introduced. I think the set is extremely polarizing because it has like few leaders that I really like Traun. Traun.
Oh come on, that Piet is cool.
No,
Oh.
Piet. There is Piet in the set, but there is also the other half of the leaders, and
I think Boba is cool. I think indirect damage is an amazing mechanic.
oh yeah. Let's
I'm helping
talk
you
about,
out. I'm helping you.
Then let's talk about the mechanics and cards because there are a lot of things that you can like about the set. I think there introduced few cards that I really hoped they would, like No Glory, which was card that is what was really needed. They also introduced cards like Chewbacca. So for me, the set was a really big disappointment because it pushed the game, the whole game, into really aggressive, risky strategies, and I think we are still kinda leaving the like this decision to this point. A lot of cards introduced in this set can win you the game when played, or lose you the game if your opponent has an answer to them. And like, this is the reason why I really hate this set. The other part is it also introduced, for example, resistance that was supposed to be a like playable deck or playable archetype, which is one of the like they introduced cards that only work with resistance, and it's like total
first
of
order
5 of them. Yeah, there is like Radus, Snap Wexley, but the total amount of cards in the set is like 5. So it was really similar with like First Order. They introduced like a leader that is around a mechanic, and they didn't introduce enough cards to support it. So even though in the vacuum this set has a kinda okay limited, the limited was a little bit weird because it was really aggressive, and
It was awful.
the games were the game was ending extremely fast, but you could have cool games, and there wasn't really a leader that was super broken because most of the leaders did the same thing. And last thing that this set introduced that I hate was the bases. I didn't thought I would, but I despise Data Vault with a passion. I didn't know that free HP could make me be so annoying. I annoyed with the meta, but it had such a big impact on how the game is played in a direction that I personally don't like. So for me, for those reasons, this is the worst set in the game. And the biggest part why is this is the worst set in the game for me is that we will have to live with the set for another year. So I would much rather prefer to live with Twilight of the Republic for another year than to live with this, with Chewbacca and pilot leaders for the whole rotation.
And I'm also going to help your case. You completely forgot to mention the elephant in the room, or I did say the Django in the room. That obviously we had the worst meta ever for the first months of the set introduction.
Yeah, but I know you are guys going to mention it, and I didn't mind that meta as much. So
Yeah, when you're winning with it, of course, that does help. Like, you see, I was non-biased. Like, I did really well in Twilight of the Republic, but I still put the set in D tier. So I was not biased.
Yeah.
Okay, Sip, what do you think about Gem to Light? Anything to add to what Beton said?
So yeah, I don't want to repeat battle with
No,
like
don't,
the negative
please.
things because like I think it's kind of pointless. One thing that like I even remember that when I was like, it was like in Shadows, like maybe Twilight. I like when they announced like that JTL will be like this, will be like the set for like it will be the set for. I was like, yeah, this will not this will not end well. Like I don't have like any recording or whatever of that, but I remember like speaking to my local community about that JTL probably can be really bad because like if the game shifts towards like space too heavily, then we can have this problem of like game not being too interactive, and we kind of have that to some extent with some of the decks. And I prefer when the game's like primarily played on the ground. There are a few space units here and there, but yeah, I don't like the all-in space type of decks because they are because there is like not that much interaction with them.
I just want to add
that's one of the
on this
things.
specific point. I completely agree with you. And for a very long time, people were advocating for space leaders, for leaders that just simply deploy on space. And I think what they did was even worse than that. I think that pilot leaders are even worse than that. But even that idea of having space leaders, I was against personally, because for the exact same reason that you said, that I think it's not healthy to build a game where you can build an entire deck in space. I think this was inevitably gonna happen, because obviously as more cards get printed, inevitably some people would have made space decks, and to some degree space decks already existed in set 1. But trying to push those decks in that direction by creating leaders that lean into that, I think was a very, very bad idea. And I think that the fact that they made leader upgrades instead of simply leader that deploy in space made this even worse than what it should have otherwise be.
Yeah, exactly. Like I remember like that point because like the reason why I already acknowledged that in like the set tools, because Boba Red was like kind of a deck back then already, and it was like already like kind of leaning towards that. So that was a thing. And then when they showed pilots at first, I was like, maybe the pilots are not gonna be actually that terrible because they will make pilots work both on the ground and in space. Like that was like first spoilers of like GT. I was like, oh, maybe it will not be that bad. And then yeah,
Yeah, they
like
didn't
they
make
revealed
yeah.
like more and more pilots, and like basically all the pilots are like way stronger when they are playing with the piloting. Like they can be played on the ground, and there are like a few that are like decent when played on the ground, like Ida and Chewbacca, I guess. But for the most part, they're way better when played in space. And I feel like that's the problem. Like they could have just make the pilots be more balanced. You know, when it comes to like when you're playing them on the ground, they could just make them a little bit better and like weaker in space, so they're not as swingy. So like the piloting is maybe like a secondary type of option or something like that. And like the pilots, the leaders, like that was like I feel like the bigger problem, because you can have deck that is primarily playing in space, but if your leader is not playing on the ground, there's at least a little bit of interaction. And if your leader is also playing in space, then you're removing that part of like interacting, which is like, yeah, quite a big deal. And it kind of led to this type of environment. And that's also the thing that like there is also the thing that Beton mentioned with JTL being the first set of like the cycle of the second cycle of the sets, which means that we'll have to deal with it for the next year as well. So there is that. The kind of, I guess, good thing about limited was that leaders will equal, but then because of like the whole set with like the pilots and being so swingy with that made also limited not being that great. So overall the set, it will be very low, by far the weakest set of all of them.
Okay, so we got you guys are both putting in D tier, I suppose. I mean, Mr. Beton is putting it below E tier. We're gonna and
I think P for pilots.
P tier. That's very.
I would just call it tier JTL, and that's it.
Okay. Al, what? Anything to add on top of what
a few things.
Sip and Beton said?
So, obviously, it's kind of funny that this was one of the most balanced limited formats we've ever had, and yet, leader-wise, but it was still awful. They still managed to make it awful. Yeah, so the two things in the core rules of Star Wars Unlimited that I think aren't, like, kind of perfect, the two things that are weaker, one of them, and this is both things that this set really messed up. So one of them was the upgrades. I've always hated upgrades as a card type. I think they suck in, some of the odd upgrades are okay, but as a core mechanic I think it's terrible, and it's a lot worse than other card games like Magic have done with theirs, because it's so all in. We talked before about General's Blade. It's not a pilot, but it still sucks, because if it lands, you win the game. If it doesn't, you lose the game, right? If they waylay it, you lose. So like upgrades already really suck in this game in my opinion. And then pilot upgrades are just that to the nth degree, so they're even worse. So I think that they really went all in on one of the worst mechanics the game has. And then the other mechanic, so I come from a game called Elder Scrolls Legends, which is the Bethesda's card game, digital card game that used to have. So some people might know me from that. I did a lot of commentary in that one as well, and they had a mechanic where you had 2 arenas as well. So again, this is Star Wars Limited took I think mechanics from other card games. There's not many card games that have 2 arenas. But the arenas work the same way. You can play cards into either one. But when you played a card in like the Shadow Arena, it was called, it basically got hidden. So there was like 2 arenas. It worked a lot like Star Wars Unlimited, where you would kind of start in one arena, and then when you lost control of it as the aggro deck, you'd move over to the other one. Very similar to how space works in this game. The problem is though, when you limit cards to only being played in one arena from the base rules, like in Elder Scrolls you could play any card into either arena from the start of the game. When you do it this way, you inevitably run into the problem of obviously having all space decks or all ground decks. We've had all space with Jumps Lightspeed, we had basically all ground decks with Legends of the Force, neither of which I liked. A deck with a balance is, in my opinion, much better and a much more fun way to play the game. Now, obviously, they've done this for thematic reasons, because they are spaceships, and spaceships aren't going to fight people on the ground. So I'm not saying they shouldn't have had that rule in the game, but I think that we've suffered from it here. So yeah, I think that this set more than any other has shown the cracks in the core rules of the game, and shown that if they don't design this set well and they lean into the bad mechanics, it does result in a very, very bad set. Much like Sip, I don't.
Yeah, I just want to react to what you said here before you move on to your next point. Is that I completely agree that this is literally the only core rule in the game that is not good. Is that what you said, the lack of flexibility between the 2 arenas. But I think, as you said, also there's ways to make cards that are interesting, that play with it. Like, for example, Blue Leader is a great example for this, like a card that is a space unit that can ambush on the ground. So you can create units that have sort of overlap like this. And I think they're not leaning enough toward this. There's only one card, there's only a couple of cards that do this, that have cross interactions, and the like at least units. And there's ways to make it worse, like for example those pilot leaders. And I think they're leaning too much into what makes this mechanic worse, and not enough into what can mitigate the downside of that mechanic, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the danger with the devs. I'm not criticizing them necessarily, but more just that I think if they don't have a really clear understanding of what is good about the game and what is vulnerable to being terrible, then they'll keep making mistakes like this. There are cards in Elder Scrolls Legends that moved units between the lanes. A card called Shadow Shift, it moved, there's plenty of cards that interacted between them, and they were really important to keep the game healthy. And yeah, I absolutely agree. I don't know why they haven't they could have printed 5 of them per set. There's so many ways they could do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm surprised they haven't lent more into that. And again, it's a risk moving forward, and again, especially things like Eternal, where there are huge benefits to going all space or all ground because you can just shut off half your opponent's deck.
Basically, like you remember like the Starfing gunship, the spaceship that can attack on the ground.
Strafing gunship, yeah.
Yeah, this
I'll
card,
set you up.
this mechanic should be a universal evergreen keyword, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, what the other thing I was going to say. So yeah, we talked about limited. Again, not very good. There was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember what it was now.
We can go back to me and then go back to you if
yeah,
there's something you want to say.
Go for it, yeah.
So yeah, basically jump to Lightspeed, right? So something I just want to play devil's advocate here and say that the couple of things that were really good with this format, in my opinion. First of all, I think that even though yes, space mechanic is terrible, we all agree on this. I think indirect damage is one of the best mechanic we've ever. I think it might be the second best mechanic after Smoggle. It's a very simple idea, but it's an idea that worked, and they really managed to make like the mechanic where you decide where the damage goes. Usually, when you give the opponent the luxury to choose, those mechanics are usually not very good in card games. But here they managed to balance it in such a way that it actually works. And there's a reason why every single set, Boba, generally speaking, whether it's the yellow or the Daredevil version, is insanely popular among players, is because people love that mechanic. Even though Boba 4 is probably one of the most overplayed leader in competitive Star Wars Limited ever, but there's a good reason why he's overplayed. He's overplayed because people love indirect damage. They love dealing a bunch of damage and let the opponent do the math. They really love this, and it's a very interesting mechanic. So that was really positive. I think that's a really good upside. Another thing that I really like with Jump to Lightspeed is obviously the theme. I'm personally a big fan of like space units and space stuff in general. So I think the theme of the set was really, really good. You mentioned also the fact that it's also a set that did a great job at introducing new archetypes to the. We talked about Piet, the capital ship, Thrawn. I think Thrawn is one of the best leader, one of my favorite leaders. At least top three my favorite leaders in the game. And the when defeated shenanigans, I think that's great. So that was introduced by Jump to Lightspeed, so that was really well done. I also believe that the meta after Django/DJ Band was one of the best meta we've had. I know you guys disagree with me on this, but I think it was a very diverse. Back then it was the best meta that we had yet in terms of diversity. And I personally also think that the bases, the rare bases like Data Vaults, were very positive for the game because it slowed down the game, which I think which in my book is a positive. So I know, Betonia, I know you disagree with this, but that's very subjective, right? What kind of playstyle we prefer. But I think Data Vault. Also, I think that there's benefit in forcing people to build 60 card decks because it makes it so there's actually a wider amount of card that becomes playable because there's more space in decks. It also makes games more diverse. Like when you play against a 60 card deck, there's a more diversity of different cards you can draw every single game, which makes it for a more diverse game rather than decks where you always draw the same card every single game because you have a smaller card deck. And I think those were very positive. And I think almost every single rare base saw some amount of plays, like even the Nabat village saw some play. So I think the rare base was really well done, and we know how important bases can have in terms of impact on the meta. So I think this was some really, really positive. So for me, this set is really kind of the definition of a mixed bag per se. I would just want to touch on very quick on draft. I think draft was awful this set. I think it was the reason why it was awful is like once you get a little bit behind in a game, you were almost impossible to come back into the game. Like the game was extremely decided very, very early on and very, very one-sided. There was no way to come back in the game once you fall just a little bit behind in the early of the game because the leader deploy was just ending him way too quickly and they had no counterplay. For me, this is baffling in terms of game design, that you can say that you're going to create a mechanic where there's literally no counters to it unless your opponent plays a one resource card like Confiscate or Bamboozle. That is ludicrous game design. And this was never went through like this way.
Yeah, just a couple of points then that just to touch on.
Yeah.
So a point that some of you guys made that the Swoop Racers made was that like you hate this set kind of more than Twilight. One of the reasons why, because you were having to be stuck with this for another year. And I completely agree with the point that if we were stuck with Twilight, it wouldn't be a big deal because it was like a non-set, whereas
Yeah.
this one was an actively bad set. But I don't think that's really fair, just because like the timing of when it was released is is arbitrary. You can't blame the set for that. That's just one of those things. Like it could have been in reverse order. But even though like for me personally, I would take a set with pilots over a set that just does nothing, because at least you're getting to play with more cards. There's some, it's not like pilots right now are dominating. I don't think that like the game is being ruined by them in the meta or anything. Like it kind of sucks that the mechanic as a whole sucks, but Vader, Boba, Han 4, none of these decks are dominant. None of these decks are like you're destroying the meta. They just exist and they're there. So for the health of the game, like honestly, like even though the mechanic itself sucks, having a set that did nothing. If we had Twilight right now, we could effectively be in like a 2-set meta or whatever, or maybe some of those cards would see play after Spark Rebellion rotates. So like, at the end of the day, like for me, I would take a set with some unsavory mechanics that actually does something to impact the game than one that has no desirable cards whatsoever. I think that's just gross. And for the bases, again, I've got to disagree with you, Beton, on that as well. I'm a Sabine player. Data Vault has made my life much more difficult, but I think that the bases are cool. They're interesting. They're cool. They change the way the game's played. Aggro is absolutely still an archetype you can play. So it's not as if it's killed all aggro. Mid-range still sees play. So it's not done anything to the meta in that sense. It's just that, the only reason really to have decks that are like to not want really big decks in any card game is because they might be more expensive to build. But at the end of the day, like in Star Wars Unlimited, that is not a problem. One of the only things we don't have a problem with at the moment is the cost of the game.
Yeah.
Not be so. Having to pay for 60 card decks is not a big deal at all. If you look at like Marvel Snap, that's like I don't know, like 12 card decks or whatever. There's no diversity in gameplay whatsoever. So like having 60 card decks, it's an interesting deck building decision. You get to play more of your collection. You get to see more one-offs and cool different cards. I think Data Vaults are really one of the best bases they've made, honestly. Even though personally it's I don't like to play with it myself. I think it gives people a good reason to play a different way, which is cool.
Okay, so are we putting Jump to Lightspeed? So me personally, I would put Jump to Lightspeed in C tier. Where do you put it, Al?
D tier as well. I think even though I do think it's better than Twilight, I think it's very, very marginally better. Again, just because I think a set that has no impact is the cardinal sin. So yeah, but I do think it's still D tier. I think a game with sets like this, with one or two more sets like this, is a really big problem, and I just hope that they don't ever print a set as bad as this again.
Yeah, I mostly have a problem with JTL because we will be stuck with it for a really long time.
Let's not take this into account.
I think D tier is a perfect space because it is in D tier for completely other reasons than Twilight.
Yeah, for sure.
The only thing I positively might add to the set that it also introduced a lot of cards for different decks that were impactful, like Krennic, like
Blue Leader.
But I think Blue Leader might be a little bit overtuned.
Oh no, I don't. We are allowed to have strong cards.
But oh no, if you have anything with pilot, I think there's one card with pilot mechanic I think I'm okay with, and it's Boschek.
Boschek, yeah. I also am fine with Luke. Yeah. Anyway, so Jump to Lightspeed below Twilight Republic or above Twilight Republic is the big debate
above.
here.
I think above, mostly because I know I made a joke that put it a tier below, but at the same time, Twilight almost, for a lot of people, it even killed the game.
Yeah.
And even though Jump, I think it's a push into the direction I personally don't like. Like, we cannot compare them as, like, Twilight was objectively worse set.
Okay, so yeah, we're putting it D tier above Twilight Republic. Sip, you okay with this? Moving on to next set.
Yeah, so before we I will just agree with that. Like, I think even though I absolutely despise the pilots, I don't think there's maybe there is, but I feel like it's one of the worst feelings where the opponent plays like Vader pilot, Iden pilot, Chewbacca 10-2, and you can't really interact with that and just lose the game because of that. Like that's the thing I absolutely hate about the set.
Yeah, yeah,
And
for sure.
and with JTL, in like the meta of JTL, I like maybe I misremember it at this point, but I don't think the pilots were already a problem in JTL. I feel like the pilots kind of became a problem later in like the set 5 and now a little bit in set 6 because like the Saxon got better, because like Boba Data Vault got better, and so like that made the meta of JTL
Okay,
to be
so
better.
the history on this is that you're right. Space decks were not that popular in Jump to Lightspeed, and I think that's one of the reasons why the meta of Jump to Lightspeed was actually very good after Django got banned. And basically, space decks really started to become a lot more popular because they were countering the false decks. Because we had this set which was heavily emphasizing on ground versus that set that was heavily emphasizing on space. And this is where playing space started to become like really popular because it was countering what Legend of the Falls was trying to do. So this is basically what happened. And since then, Jump to Lightspeed has continued to be like very strong. Well, let's move on to the next set, Legend of the Falls. And I'm gonna start with the player who won the World Championship with this set, Mr. Beton. What do you think? Unbiased opinion, regardless of your success on this set, what do you think about Legend of the Falls?
I think it was really set that was really needed for the game. Because it not only like reintroduced the characters that everybody knows and likes. It introduced the legends like Revan that people were super excited about. The force mechanic was a little bit risky, I think, but at the same time it paid off kinda well. It's not perfect mechanic, but it broadened the possibility of power level of cards.
Yes.
There were of course some mistakes in the set. I think the leaders in the set are awful. Most of them are unplayable. There are few that are really good, like Talzin, Kylo.
That's it.
I guess Obi-Wan.
I guess
Obi-Wan
Obi-Wan
was
and
a-
Snoke. Obi-Wan and Snoke and Maul can be played.
I make the prediction that Obi-Wan is gonna be. I actually in my video of the leaders that benefit the most from rotation. I think I make the prediction that Obi-Wan is gonna be the leader that's gonna benefit the most from rotation. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's just a side subject.
Okay, and like continuing, I think the other thing that was for me really missed was the bases. The neutral bases were fine. I think they are the 2 HP loss is like well statted, but the rare bases are awful. I think making them 25 HP was just a mistake. They are basically unplayable. The really good part of the set that it had actually really well balanced limited, because we didn't have one exp leaders, we had 2 of them, and we also had a leader that competed with them with Talzin. So we kinda had a trifecta of leaders that were really good. And you also could build an aggressive deck that was countering it with Third Sister, so limited was really fun to play.
Which was very important because it was the first time we had competitive limited events.
The change that they made to made more powerful 2-drops started in the set. So we got Yaddle, we got all the 2/4, 2/5s that kind of slowed the game a little bit, which can be a good, can be a bad thing. It's mostly a decision. I didn't mind it. It introduced a lot of cards that are really meta-defining, and at the same time, they are not as overpowered. Like, for example, I really like the design of Craving Power. I think it's a little bit better designed Overwhelming Barrage. But at the same time, we still got really bad legendaries in the set. We got the force mechanic, which was really cool, and a lot of leaders were using it, and it was a really powerful mechanic because we had a card that made it a little bit too good. So they couldn't really ban force throw with the set because it would make all the force leaders and bases kinda unplayable, what we have now. But at the same time, because you had to play a force leader, there were not enough force units in all of the colors to make that strategy possible for everybody. So we had like villainous yellow that was almost unplayable in this meta. I had a lot of fun in this meta, and I put a lot of time into playing the decks. So I will always have a fond memories around this set, but I think it's the set that it would be a great baseline for the set. If we had something better, awesome. If we would have something worse, it would be bad. But I wouldn't mind if sets going forward would be Legends of the Force like in power, setting, and like broadening new things to the game.
Yep. Yeah. So,
So
you was
I would put it in the A tier.
A tier. Okay, so A tier below Shadow of the Galaxy.
Below Shadows. I think for me it's like below B and A.
Below
But,
B and A.
yeah, below between B and A, but
Yeah.
a
More
little bit
into
more
A.
into an A for me because like I have a special connection to this set.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things you were saying is that that the force was a risky mechanic. I think it's the opposite. I think I was actually pretty safe because one of the advantage of the force mechanics is to say I can design all those broken cards and I know that they will be contained in that environment. And whenever you are doing playtesting and game design, it's so much easier to actually playtest within that more contained environment rather than having a card that releases in the wild and where the outcome is a lot. So I think it was actually intended to be a safe mechanic, and I think it was a great choice to do this before the World Championship, so we knew that we were not going to end up in a tier 0 meta because it would be in more controlled environment, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Moving on to Al. Al, what do you think about Legend of the Force? Do you have anything to add to what Beton said?
Yeah, I had a very different experience. I mean, firstly, I didn't win the World Championship, so, so I think the theme of the set is really good. You know, up there with like you said. I mean, some of these kind of weaker sets that do have like good themes and stuff. You know, it's like you said, the theme in Twilight was actually quite good. You know, Force is like a big deal in the Star Wars universe. So like, you know, I think it was cool they went with the Force set. It was obviously going to happen at some point. I personally, I'm not a huge Star Wars guy anyway, but I'm really not into the Force at all. Like,
Me too.
You know, I love lightsaber battles and, you know, space battles, and like I do like lightsaber combat, but I don't like Force using and, you know, the midichlorians and all that nonsense. Like, I'm not a big fan of all that. So, like, for me personally, the theme didn't excite me about the game at all, but I think for a lot of people it did, so that's good. The leaders were, again, it's like they can't get both things right? Like the set itself was quite good power level wise, but the leaders were terrible. You know, you can go, there was some very good leaders. There was like Talzin's like a solid leader. I know you won the World Championship with it, but that doesn't mean by definition it's a very good leader. Kylo Ren is like okay, and then the rest of them are trash. So like honestly, like I think that the leaders were really disappointing this set. The stat boost to like 2-drops and 3-drops and stuff to basically make the default like a 2-4 or a 3-5 was, you know, really cool. It obviously meant the set could actually compete in a world with Spark Rebellion on previous sets because they did that. So that was a really important decision. This is the first set where they started like implementing that change, which was good.
I just want to add on this specific before you move on to the next point. Building strong Force 2-drops was absolutely essential for the 20 HP base to work. For the entire Force, like we needed first enablers for this, so the set to work. So we needed high health 2-drop force like Secretive Sage, Yaddle, and Gungi for the set to work. Full stop. I don't think the set would work without those cards. And that's the reason why I put those set as the best card in the set. And a lot of people were surprised. If I literally think the set doesn't work if those cards don't exist.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, I think a lot of the power level of the set was sunk into Force Throw. I think when Force Throw got banned, it didn't, kill the set, of course, but I think it did take a massive hit. And nowadays, a lot of the set doesn't see play really because of that, which is a shame because, again, it was almost like it was on borrowed time because it was relying on that card. This was the first set that I properly played limited because before this point I kind of done a little bit here and there, but I didn't take it seriously because obviously there weren't any tournaments or anything. And then I obviously got hired to commentate a tournament, the Bilbao tournament, for this, so I had to get learned up on limited and stuff. And I'm glad I did because the limited, it was really cool limited set. And the past two sets have been so abysmal that I think it was really important they got one right, which was good. That was good to see. Another reason why I played limited this set is, like I said at the start of this, I kind of had the opposite experience to bet on, where he kind of enjoyed the meta. I really disliked the meta for personal reasons. I really disliked the meta in this, the Premier meta, because for me, Force Throw made aggro, kind of redundant except for Space aggro decks. And Space aggro decks, like we talked about in the last set, I'm not going to blame Legends of the Force on this because it was a problem that was created by Jump to Lightspeed being so terrible. But the space aggro decks suck, and it sucks to play with them. It sucks to play against them. They do suck, and when you're forced to play them, I was forced to play Kazuda or whatever, right, instead of Sabine, because Force Throw was just ruining Sabine and other ground-based aggro decks. It really made the game so polarized because we had a whole set dedicated to space, whole set dedicated to ground, and there was just these two ships passing in the night. Just so that aggro, and I love playing aggro, just so that aggro could survive Force Throw. So between Force Throw and Jump to Lightspeed, that pilot mechanic, it led to a meta that I really didn't enjoy personally. And again, I'm not going to hold it too much against the set, but I do think that, just for me personally, it sucked. But again, thankfully, I had a refuge in Limited because Limited was good. So yeah, I did enjoy Limited in the set, and thankfully, a lot of good things did come out of this set. But I do think that, I think that, again, the power level for me could have been a little bit higher personally. I would have liked to see it be a little bit higher in some places. And again, I think a lot of the power level was sunk into Force Throw, which when it was banned, I think the set has took a massive hit since. And, again, it's to me, it's not in the best place. It's not exactly where I would want it to be. So, yeah, I think it's a pretty good set. I think I would put it in the B tier. My personal experience was closer to a C tier, but I think objectively it's like a B tier set. And I think if all the sets were like this, we would be in a pretty good spot.
Okay, so we got Legend of the Force in B tier for now. Let's see if Sip wants to change the fate of that set. Do you have anything to add to what was said, and would you rather put this set in A tier or B tier, Sip? Or lower?
To be fair, I'm again kind of in the middle, probably a little bit more leaning towards B tier. So my a little bit of my issue was that Legends was one of the first sets that was kind of started to mess with the amount of aggro, mid-range, and control decks. I feel like this is the set that started making mid-range really good because
yeah,
this set specifically made aggro work very poorly, all mentioned, with the Force Throw. And there are a lot of very good value cards for the mid-range, like Yadimundi and such. And I feel like there is a little bit too much of those value type of cards in Legends specifically, and kind of in the Secrets as well. So that's a thing that I don't really like that much. Limited, I think it was okay, because there were enough leaders that were strong, and I feel like one thing that I really liked in Limited, and at least in pre-releases I remember that specifically, I really enjoyed the force mechanic and how that was playing out with from the thematical standpoint. So that was pretty good. And even though this set was making you heavily play on the ground, I feel like the ground arena, just because it's the primary arena to play, it's okay if this set makes you play in that arena primarily. And yeah, I think just because I don't think Unlimited should be played in a way where there's 50-50 split because there's no interaction. I think it should be just mostly ground and a little bit of a space. And because this set made you play to the ground. I think it was fine in that sense. There was one more point that Beton made that I didn't
just
agree
to
with.
react to what you say, I think the problem is not that the deck was going to make you play on the ground by itself, but it's just the interaction with, you have a set that is mostly focused on space, and then right after you making a set that is mostly ground, and I think that's that contrast which created problem. I think if it was Legend of the Force by itself without jump to Lightspeed, it would have been fine, but that's the contrast between the two that caused issue basically.
Yeah, but I say that I don't mind it. Like I think it was
Yeah,
completely
okay.
fine.
Fair enough.
And that's kind of where I am staying with that. There's one thing that Beton said that I didn't agree, but to be honest, I forgot what he said. At this
That's
point,
why you
but,
should you should have.
Yeah, like I couldn't interrupt that, but yeah.
That's why it's important sometimes to interrupt, so then you can get your point across. But anyway, I can give my thoughts and then you can come back to it if you remember. So me personally, I think Legend of the Force was a pretty good set. Like what I really liked about Legend of the Force is that it managed to introduce very powerful cards, but they were contained within their archetypes, which I think was great. We mentioned, I think Yoda is one of the best example of this. I think both meta were some of the best meta in terms of diversity, but I agree with what Sip said, that basically this set basically brought a lot of value engine. Kiadimundi, also Owen Lars was another great value engine, but did not introduce and didn't give any new tools for control, which resulted into control becoming, soft control became, like basically Kira Data Vault went from the best deck in a Jump to Lightspeed meta to being a tier 2 deck pretty much. And hard control was also anecdotal. There were a couple of decks that came here to the rescue, like Thrawn and stuff, but overall I think the control has never been so weak than in Legend of the Force. I feel like the set would have been much better if they would have introduced a couple of cards that would have worked in control. So that I agree with you. With that being said, I think that I personally put Legend of the Force on the same level of goodness as Shadow of the Galaxy, which in this case would be A tier. But since I wanted Shadow of the Galaxy to be B tier, then I would want to put those two sets in B tier instead of A tier. But I would want to put those two sets on the same tier. It's kind of so yeah. So are we putting this A tier or B tier, guys? We need to decide.
B for me, nowhere near A for me personally, but
Okay, well we'll put.
For me, it was split. Then I would put it in B tier.
Okay,
Like,
let's
also,
put it
just
B
some
tier.
very, very quick minor gripe, but it did matter for me. Is
Yeah.
that if you look at like tokens in Twilight Republic, like the one ones and stuff, they're really cool. They work. You know, like they fit thematically, they make sense, and they're like there's no bookkeeping. The Force token was the opposite of all of that. For me, the Force token didn't make any thematic sense. Like you don't either have the Force or not. That's not how the Force works. And again, I know I'm not a war guy. But that just
That's a
isn't how it
quote from
works. And then,
I think you made a
then,
quote from The Last Jedi with the that's not how the Force
It's not
works.
actually, that was purely inadvertent. Look at that. And then that film's lodged in my brain somewhere. And then the other thing like about it is that it was really annoying to keep track of. Like like I said, after commentating an event in Limited in particular, like the amount of people who forgot to flip the Force base when they should have had the Force. Like it happened all the time. So like, and it happened with experienced pros, not just like new players. So honestly, it was like a nightmare for bookkeeping, and it didn't make sense in the theme. So I really didn't like the Force token for those reasons. Even though, like gameplay wise, strictly gameplay played out well, I think it was really annoying actually. So yeah, that's something else that tipped it into the B tier.
I didn't mind too much. I think like most of the time when people, at least when good players forget about the Force token, is because it doesn't matter. Like I think that most of the good players, they don't forget about the Force token when it matters. But
this is the problem. You don't get to choose when it matters.
I know. You know what I mean? Like
it's really annoying. Yeah.
Guys, anything to add before we move on to Secrets of Power?
no.
Okay, so we're gonna have Secret of Power, and I'm gonna give this time Al the first say. So then, Beton can add up to it afterwards. But yeah, Al, what do you think about the latest set, Secrets of Power?
Just one very last gripe, and sorry, I just wanted to say one last thing quickly
Okay.
about that force token thing. All I had to do, by the way, was make the forces with you optional, and then if you forgot about it, I don't care. I can get to sleep at night. But because they made it not optional, it means that like the game state is ruined. So for judges all around the world, please in future FFG make mechanics like this optional, so that if you miss it, it's your problem, and not the the person watching the game the problem. Anyway,
Okay. That's like I can tell this is caster trauma here speaking.
Exactly, right? Because the amount of people who put in the chat when you miss it, oh that's wrong, and they blame me, and it's like please FFG don't do this. Okay, so Secrets of Power. Thematically, I am not a huge fan of the theme, honestly. Like I think some of the weakest parts of the films are kind of like the politicking, and that's what the whole set is based on. And when you have cards like trade route taxation, and there's like a lot of cards that are like famously real world boring things that nobody's interested in, and it's like the Star Wars universe, like I just think that there's something like not satisfying about that. It's just like the opposite to the last set, when the last set was all about force and mystical, and like even though I'm not into the force, it just kind of felt Star Warsy. This is like the most boring like theme ever to me personally. So yeah, I'm not a fan of the theme. It's a bit early to say. We're obviously in the midst of Secrets of Power, so it's too early for me to really fully conclude where we're going to end up with it. But I feel like the meta's like pretty good. The meta's been kind of good since Django got banned. Honestly, I don't think the meta's been that bad since then. So like,
agree.
Really meta-wise, even though I didn't love Legends of the Force, I much prefer this meta personally. But I think all the past few sets have been fine. The leaders are too weak. But again, we're in a 6-set meta, so I do feel a bit, when the leaders are weak in like, I don't know, set 4 or something, it's not really good enough. When it's the 6th set, I can understand them being a bit weaker because we're gonna have rotation. They don't want leaders to be completely dominant from this set, so I'm a little bit more sympathetic to FFG. But the leaders are too weak. Palpatine's is basically the only one that sees play. I guess Sabe a bit as well, but there's basically just Palpatine, and he's just worse Kylo. So, like, honestly, there really isn't enough reasons to play any of these leaders. They're just worse versions of things we've already got, which kind of sucks. We didn't get rare bases, which again, it would have been nice to do like rare bases. The mechanics, spies, I think are really cool. Again, I love tokens. I think it's a cool way to do another token. I don't mind it. Plot, you know what plot is? It's like it's much worse than Smuggle. It's nowhere near as good as Smuggle, but it does have some of the same flavour, which I do like. And honestly, I think a mechanic 6 sets in, again we're in the most cards we're going to have in a meta joint with we're in future metas, and in a premier meta, and honestly, to create a mechanic that actually is having an impact in the game, I think takes some doing. So I'm kind of happy they've done that. I would rather have plot or even pilots for that matter than Twilight's mechanics that saw no play. So like. Again, I'm just happy plot is actually good and sees some play, to be honest with you, because I think otherwise this set would have felt really rubbish again. But yes, a plot. There are problems with the mechanic. It's not the best thing ever, but I don't mind it. I think it's cool, and I think it's fine. And again, I think the fact that it makes an impact is good enough. There are a decent number of good cards that see play, which is good. So I think the power level of the set, again, in a 6-set meta to actually make playable cards is hard. So I'm glad they've done that. The legendaries in this set are completely embarrassing. It's to talk about some of the bad stuff. The legendaries these might be some of the worst we've had. I'm not sure. I haven't actually compared them directly, but these might be the worst legendaries we've had in any set. They're
by far actually. They're actually
there's
quite a bit worse than
one that
Twilight
sees
Republic.
play. I guess 2 that see play. But yeah, the legendaries are unbelievably bad. Which again, I know we're in 6 sets, but there's no excuse for that. It's really not that difficult to make these cards legendary. Karis Nemec. While I'm personally benefiting from it a great deal because Sabine I think is in a great spot now with him. He might be one of the he's probably in the top like 5 worst cards for the game that printed. Honestly, like I think the card is atrociously bad for the game. He even though I actually quite like he fits my playstyle and everything, he's not an upgrade and stuff like that, but I just feel like he's way too powerful. Like I actually can't believe this card got past the testing team. I've never really looked at a card before and thought that card is just objectively wrong. Like the other cards that have been banned, it's not that they've been objectively wrong in terms of the numbers. Except I guess Boba is probably the
Boba would be the other
Boba
example.
shouldn't be a 4/7. Obviously, should have been a 4/6 or whatever, or a 3/7. But Nemec, like he clearly should not have had those numbers, and I honestly don't know what they were thinking. I do not know what went through their brains to make that card as good as it is. It's absolutely absurd to print a card in a meta with 6 sets and it to be by far, in my opinion, the strongest card in the game. I think is ridiculous. And not only that, but like, you know, when rotation happens, if Nemec doesn't get banned, which by the way I think is a very good chance he will, if Nemec doesn't get banned, then he's going to be like so far above the other cards in the game, it's not even close. And he doesn't synergize. It's not like he synergizes specifically with cards that are rotating out, like some of the other cards that are strong. He just goes in any red-white deck, and he's absurd. So yeah, I don't think they've ever made a mistake as big as him in terms of like, you know, in terms of like they took a risk with the Triple Dark Raid and with Django. You know, Boba and Nemec to me are the two examples of cards that just show me that their design needs work, because the numbers are wrong, and I could have told you that 2 seconds after looking at cards. The numbers are wrong.
And it's more it's more forgiving for Boba because it was the first set. Even for Boba it's hard to justify because you just have to compare it to other leaders. But for Nemec it's like, come on guys.
Yeah, I mean, there are probably like half a dozen things you could have done to him to make, you know, he could have not been a rebel, he could have been a 2/2, he could have not had hidden, he could have had disclosed higher cost. They gave him everything. The Rit Spy could have obviously not come in ready, that's probably the best change. They could have made so many changes to him, and they printed it like that. And the worst thing about it, honestly, like, it probably would have sucked if he was a legendary, granted, you know, because everyone would need 3 copies, but at the very least, people would have a reason to fucking want to. Excuse me if I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear, but people would have a reason to open boxes, right, to get the name.
Yeah, no, I think he's fine as a rare. He's fine as a rare. He's a 12 euro rare. That's fine. Don't give them bad ideas. This is definitely not the kind of card you should make legendary.
No, it's not. But yeah, there are a bunch of other cards that should make legendary. But yeah, so
Yeah.
overall, it's early days. Everybody talks about limited. I think limited's solid. I'm enjoying limited a lot. I think it's absolutely fine. Even though Leia's too good, but I don't think she's so much of a problem that's going to ruin the game like Anakin. So I think this is one of the better limited formats we've had. And yeah, so I think the set's fine for it. I'm happy with it as a set 6. But yeah, for me, it would be in the. I'm hard between B and C. I think it's another B tier, to be honest. I don't think Legends of the Force is that much better than this set, although I think this set maybe is a bit worse, just because of Nemec. If Nemec wasn't in the set, maybe it would have been better, but yeah, I think it's B tier.
Okay. I'm gonna go next. So basically, Secrets of Power, my opinion. So first of all, once again, I'm not gonna repeat what you say, I'm just gonna add up to it. One of the problem I have with the set is, first of all, I'm gonna take his defense for the theme. I do believe that politics is an important part of Star Wars, even though it's not necessarily the most exciting. And I think that Star Wars Unlimited is about representing every single aspect of Star Wars, so we had to have a set about this. So I think they had to have it.
A midichlorian set at some point.
Yeah, well, that's the Force. That's part of the Force. But like Secret of Power, like the politics is a big part of the show of Handor, which was one of the most beloved shows. So there's ways to do it right. I think that politics is definitely a part of Star Wars, needs to be in the game somehow. So they had to make it, so they did it with this, and I think the theme is relatively well represented, even though it could have been better. One of my criticisms of the set, first of all, I think that the mechanics are not creating new archetypes, and that's one of my main grips, is that there's no plot, is just a mechanic that it's a little bit similar to Shadow of the Galaxy, where plot is like smuggle kind of card that you put in your deck, and Disclose is also not really a real archetype, except with Padme, which apparently is not good enough. So the set completely failed to introduce new archetypes, and for me that's a big negative. I also think that plot I don't think is a good mechanic. I think plot could have been like a pseudo smuggle, but they decided to make it so basically plot says, I do not want to interact with you. There's so many plot cards that I think are pretty toxic, like Cinta, like the card that prevent, like trade route taxation, like those kind of cards are just obnoxious. They're just cards that are here to say, first of all, they make leader deployment even more powerful than they already were, and I think that Star Wars Unlimited by default as like tilts a little bit too much towards leader deployment being super impactful, which I'm not a big fan of. But this makes this even worse, and it makes it so, oh yeah, you do not get to interact with me. Now I get to basically deploy my Darth Vader into a space unit, and I can play trade route taxation, and now you're not even getting to play a confiscate. You don't even have any counters to it. So those kind of designs for me are not great. And so I don't like plot at all. I think Disclose is meh. It's like it's barely an inconvenience. And the only part where Disclose is interesting is card like with the one that requires triple yellow, double white. What's the name?
Faith in your friends.
Faith in your friends.
Thanks. So this one is actually pretty interesting because it's actually a real deck building constraint. But so not a big fan of the mechanic that the set introduced. So overall, I think it's a pretty weak set. It's the cards are powerful, and as you said, the leaders are terrible. Probably some of the worst leaders. Again, as I said, it's not very fair because it's the last set of a cycle of 6. But even then, I still think the leaders are just really weak. So yeah, weak leaders, powerful cards. For me, I would put this set in C tier personally.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Can I just make one quick point as well before we get on to the sweet
Yeah.
classes? Right. Budget scheming, trade route taxation, let's talk. That's a legendary called Let's Talk, and unauthorized investigation. It literally sounds like my 9 to 5 day at the office. Like, it sounds like my work day. I play card games to escape the work. And the theme of this set is you're an office worker. So yeah.
Yeah, but
that's
it's
really
part
fun
of
with the
Star
theme.
Wars, bro. It's part of Star
It
Wars.
is part of this. Well, yeah, I wish it wasn't, but yeah. I just wanted to say that.
They need to make the world believable somehow. They need to make.
Well, they've done that. Let's talk.
Okay. Yeah, no, the legendaries are just dreadful, both from a thematic and power level. Sip, do you have anything to add to what we said? And do you agree with the C tier ranking, or would you put it somewhere else?
So yeah, like starting off, I understand that Al doesn't like the whole environment of like workspace and such, but to be fair, I don't mind the politics, and especially because like Under made it correct, like did it pretty well, and like a lot of like a lot of cards in the set are based on that show, and I don't think it's like yeah, I don't think it's like a crazy statement to say that like Andor is the best Star Wars that Disney made. So yeah, there is that. And one thing that like you Thorrk said about the disclose, that you don't like I don't know what exactly you said, but you didn't like the disclose that much. And to be fair, I kind of like the disclose. So
It's fine. It's
maybe-
neutral. Like it's neutral. It's like it doesn't create new
Okay.
archetypes. Was my point.
yes, it doesn't create the new archetypes, and like the biggest reason why I don't think it creates like the new archetypes is because like the leaders are just not great. Like if Padme was just tiny bit better, I feel like the deck could really like make the disclose work, because I played Padme quite a bit, and she's pretty like quite cool. Like I really like the part where you have like to think about like which cards you want to keep in hand to make the disclose possible, because like it's not free. Like you need to think about like when do you want to do the discloses. Sometimes you want to gamble, and like with the Namek, just not keep the red card or like heroic card in hand, and like keep the other color, just because like it's more like better for your current situation and such. So yeah, I don't mind the disclose that much.
So just coming
think
back on
plot-
the disclose, I think that even if Padme was like was actually competitive, just like she's basically a ping leader. Well, we've seen this a million times. She's basically heroism Cad Bane. Like I don't think that. I mean, you're mentioning about which card to disclose. I think this is like. It's a fair point, but I think overall she's not really modifying the play patterns, and I don't think even if she was meta, I don't think she would be a particularly interesting leader. As at least it's not something we haven't seen already in the game, because for some reason the designer of these games are addicted to ping leaders, which I still don't understand why. But they are so excited about them. They make them every single set, but.
Yeah, so like I agree with that, and I think it would be awesome if they like added maybe like an extra 1 or 2 leaders that would interact with the plot and discloses in some way. Not necessarily like with the ping, but in some sort of like other benefit, like with I don't know, card draw, like manipulation of like drawing or whatever. But yeah, that would be pretty cool with the disclose. Another thing is that meta, like so far, I think it's solid. I don't think it's terrible. I feel like it's more of the same as we had in set 5.
Yeah,
Not
agree.
in terms like it's the same decks, but like the dynamic of like all of the colors, like all of the colors are basically the same. There's nothing no like new color combination, which would be kind of nice. Like I know it's kind of hard to make like things like blue work with yellow because like blue is like all about stalling and yellow is like about like the exact opposite. Like the yellow is about like creating tempo advantage by like bouncing things and such. So it's kind of hard to like make those two colors work. But it would be nice if we didn't have like consistently like green red heroic decks, blue green villainy, and things like that in the meta.
Well, buckle up because Nemec's going to keep that going for a long time.
Yeah, I know. That's why I mentioned at the start with like the problem of like maybe there is a little bit of too much value with
Yeah.
the game right now with
And-
the
and-
cards. But
And then we're going back exactly to what I was saying at the very beginning of the podcast, where I think that one of the cool thing and the reason why I think non-errorism, non-villainy color combinations that would be so great for the game because they would actually enable new archetypes. They still need, for the record, they still need to make double aspect work, which is they still haven't been able to do that. So that they were still waiting for FG to actually print a good double aspect card for those color combinations to be more popular as well.
yeah.
But I agree with
And
you
like-
that the meta is balanced, but it's kind of more of the same. Like it's very mid-rangey and so.
Yes, and that's kind of why I'm also like to some extent hopeful with the new set because even though maybe they're not like doing this combination of like green blue type of deck that I think you mentioned at like earlier, but they can make like those less popular color combinations that we currently have. Like they can make maybe blue yellow work somehow. Like Hondo is maybe not the best example of that. But maybe there will be
Bad
something
start.
yeah, maybe there will be something that will make it work somehow. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the set and. I would honestly probably put it like a little bit higher. I would put it in the B tier. Like I think C
Okay.
tier is a little bit too harsh. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like weaker than Legends, but yeah, I think it's a B tier.
Okay, so Beton, you have the last word for the podcast. Do you got
Yeah.
anything to add to what we already said?
I don't really know
Okay.
what to feel about the set like in a whole because yeah, we are in the kind of state that we just started to have a PQ season. The meta seems similar. So and I know it will not change much. I think I will have much better opinion of this set after rotation because we will see 90% of playable leaders leave the game for Premiere, and maybe we will finally have place to go like Slimore or Jabba.
Finally, those pilot leaders can reach their full potential.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just hope they will print like a 2 mana, 2/5 unit. You cannot attack in space if you are piloting it.
well, they did
every-
print Hyperspace Disaster, which is
in every single color, so you don't need to choose play.
Just printed in like the colorless. So
Yeah, but what I really
Hyperspace
like
Disaster
about
colonists.
yeah, what I really like about the set that it has a lot of unique cards, like cards with mechanics that we didn't have. Like for example, General Grievous, the new 2 mana 3/3.
Unplayable, but okay.
Oh, it is a card that can be playable with an a deck that would really benefit from it. I think if the exploit Dooku was slightly better, it would be a really good fit for the deck. For example, like Grand Admiral Traun. I don't really have as negative things to say about plot. I really don't mind it. I only mind Cinta because this is where the non-interactive part really comes to fruition.
True.
But for example, like Topple the Summit makes new interactions between leaders that like couldn't do it before. I think, of course, the biggest issue, and I think this is the most prevalent than it ever was legendaries, as you mentioned before. But I never thought we will have a legendary like Lect stock. Not only I think it's terrible as a design, it's terrible as a like it is an event that represents nothing. It has nothing. Let's Talk has nothing to do with the effect of the card, and I think it's the first card in the game that it would, if it would cost 2 mana less, it would still not be played.
I'll tell you what, though, it's a great name for the Enigma podcast. The Let's Talk podcast is great.
Let's Talk.
We finally found a use for that card.
Yeah. So
It's one of these cards that are so bad it becomes a meme. Yeah.
yeah. With this close, I only want to add that I think they screwed up a little bit with the power level of the mechanic, because we either have cards like Typho that, even if you remove the whole disclose from the card, would still be one of the better cards in the set. Or we have cards like with Thunderous Applause that if you have the same effect without disclose, the card would not be played anyway. So I think they only nailed it on like Mina Bonteri, which actually has a really good effect, but with high disclose and with Fate in Your Friends. And the rest of the cards are either bad even if you disclose, or good even if you didn't disclose, which is kinda disappointing. So this set is really polarizing for me. There is so many really cool cards, and at the same time, there is so many cards that I thought would be in the Twilight set, like Unauthorized Investigation, which is 3 mana, and if you disclose, you create 2 spies.
Can I just say as well, to my point about the boring theme, I forgot the worst one. There's a card that's literally called Bog Down in Procedure. Come on. Come on. That is literally my daily life. Like, please, I don't want to use it in my card games, in my hobby time, please.
Yeah, but it's a thematically strong card. Like
the characters are bored on the art.
yeah. That's what they are supposed to do. They are working.
Okay, Beton.
Yeah. Okay, but
Is this set B tier or C tier?
I wouldn't put it. I would put it between C and B, but I think B is more realistic, because I think this set will gain a lot post rotation, and even before rotation, we still have tons of cards that impacted a meta, and with a set that is the last in rotation, I think it's really hard to have this big impact. Even when they had to, like, they forgot that they combined 4 different designs for Namek into one and printed it. But at the same time, it's fun. Like the meta is fun. Most of the cards did something new, and I just hope I will get to use that cool cards in Premiere after the rotation.
Okay. So are we putting B or C then? Who's said C? I'm the one who said C. Everybody said
I think you said C. We all said B.
Okay, so B then.
I think so.
Okay, so yeah, so for people who are listening at home, we put Spark of Rebellion in S tier, Shadow of the Galaxy in A tier, Legend of the Force and Secrets of Power in B tier, Legend of the Force above Secrets of Power though, and then we put nothing in C tier, and in D tier we put Jump to Lightspeed, and then below Jump to Lightspeed we put Twilight of the Republic also in D tier. And that's it, that's our tier list. Wow, this took a while.
It was kind of a whole history of Star Wars Limited, to be fair. So.
Yeah, we kind of like, I didn't realize that doing this tier list would take that long, but yeah, we kind of rewind the entire history of the game. So that was kind of wild. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I think it was a perfect way to kind of wrap up the year, though, because it's going to be the last podcast of 2025. We're trying to do one podcast per month. I think it's a good rhythm. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Obviously, we don't expect you to listen to all this in one go. Let us know if you enjoyed it, what you would improve, and you guys have anything to say as a last word.
Just wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I hope you all get Prestige foil Nemics in your stockings to use in the tournaments, the first tournaments of 2026.
Yep.
Yeah. I can only say just be prepared for Paris because we are going to wreck this tournament.
Yeah, we've been like, especially the 4 people that are in this podcast here, we've been like theorocrafting this limited format. We are very. I don't think we've ever been so prepared for a limited format ever, right?
Yeah, that's the perfect moment to go 0-3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just open your pack to see if 6 C3POs and you just go play side event.
Yeah, you're gonna open 2 3PO, 1 Bale, two what's it called? I mean all the DTL leader.
Raiden.
Yeah, and then
And Venom will open 1 Jabba to have to play him.
no, I then I go full C3PO, only upgrades go base.
yeah, and like it would. No, we were very well prepared because we've been. To be honest, I've been more excited about working on limited than constructed for this set. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but
Yeah,
Agreed,
I feel the same. It's not because the premiere right now is boring. It's mostly because limited is something new, especially when you go into like really high-end competitive limited. So it's the first time like we all sat down and said, like, okay, we combine what we know, and we try to grind the format as much as possible.
yeah, it's very exciting. Cool stuff. Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining me in this podcast. Also, I want to say that if Humble was there, he would probably put Secret of Power in D tier. So if we respect I'm So Humble's opinion, we should probably put Secret of Power in C tier. Just saying.
Yeah, we can also add Yosera. It would be probably even lower.
Oh yeah, Yoseras and Humble are both like pretty low on the set. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next month. And as I'll say, wish you a happy holiday to everybody. Happy Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody. And hope you guys enjoy the podcast. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.